This section is going to be about idea validation. So it's going to cover different strategies and techniques so we can make sure that you're not building something that nobody wants. So we'll cover different topics such as validation through forms, keyword validation, and payment validation. I'll also walk through an entire exercise of validating different Saas ideas. This is a crucial section here, as if you build something that nobody wants, it's essentially impossible to sell. Whereas if you have people asking for your product and they're whipping their credit cards out to pay for it, that just makes life so much easier and you can actually scale your product. Before I dive into the idea validation methods, let's first take a look at what idea validation is. So basically, it's the process of testing and researching an idea to help make sure you're building something people actually want. You don't want to spend 200, 500 hours building a product, launching it, and discovering that it's not a big enough pain point for people to actually pay for. You've just wasted all this time here. And if you did the idea validation, you could have figured that out before spending the hours building. In terms of the overall process of idea validation, we'll go through no contact ways here, so you don't have to speak to anyone in person. And so the first one is going to be keyword validation. There's going to be form validation and payment validation. I've labeled these from weak signal, medium signal to strong signal. And if you want to contact as well, which is also a really good option for figuring out what features to build and what they're actually looking for. So I would recommend doing that as well. And that's going to be speaking with at least 30 people to understand if this is a pain point they would actually pay to solve. Now, the number of people are going to depend how many you can contact. 30 people might be a lot. It's going to depend on what you're building and how much it costs to build it in terms of time. But even if you do the no contact validation, you speak to at least a few people, that's going to make a massive difference in building something that people actually want. I'll be covering keyword validation in this video. Keyword validation is what I typically first do whenever I have a new idea. And so overall, it's the concept of just using a keyword research tool and seeing if there's any existing search demand. This will just give you a general idea if people are actually looking to solve this problem. So let's run through some examples here. This is using a tool called Uber Suggest. You don't need to use this tool. Any keyword research tool will do. Google Ads also has a free keyword tool. Google Trends can also be any other tool that people use. So I've written down just some basic Saas ideas here. So the first one is going to be a TikTok influence software. Maybe I'll change this to find TikTok influencers just for a keyword. But the process is basically just taking the keyword, throwing it into a keyword research tool, and then seeing if people are searching for it. Because if people are searching for it, it's going to make it easier even just to run search ads too, which can be a really bottom of the funnel way to find your first customers. So you can see some keywords here such as find TikTok influencers, how to find them, find TikTok video by image, so probably not going to apply, find Instagram influencers by location, tools to find TikTok influencers. Unfortunately, that one doesn't have any search volume, although it might if we change this from the United States to worldwide. But we can say people are searching for it here with 170 searches per month and 30 searches per month here. So that gives us an inkling of an indicator that this could be a potential idea. That's probably a pretty general tool, so maybe we want to niche down, and maybe instead of TikTok influencers, it's micro niche influencers. So maybe we create a tool that subsections everything off from cooking influencers, dancing influencers, to sports influencers, making it easier for our product to stand out. So the next one here is AI YouTube video to shorts. So if I take a search for this here, this is something I was looking for the other day because I wanted to take my YouTube videos and just use AI as I didn't manually want to go and crop a bunch of videos. So I can see rather things such as AI YouTube video to shorts, so that's going to have 0 searches. But I can see AI YouTube video maker, so 390 searches. I can see AI YouTube comments, AI YouTube script, and AI YouTube shorts makers. So this could give me other ideas to potentially look at. I could add some more keywords saying video to shorts here. It's about trying just different variations to see what's out there and what keyword ideas it can show you. From changing the keyword, I can see other things such as video to short, video to 8MB, video YouTube shorts zoomed in. Maybe that's something that people are looking for to do for them. Video to YouTube shorts converter. We can see that one has 30 searches a month. So again, this is just giving us ideas here on potential variations of our idea, plus to see if anyone else is searching for it. This last one, let's just say Shopify SEO app. I do know this one has quite a few existing competitors, but it helps just give us an idea here. So we can see 260 people are searching for this SEO apps for Shopify, Shopify SEO tips, Shopify SEO manager. So this one has pretty good search volume here as people are looking to solve this problem. So this concludes the video here on keyword validation. It's a great way at the beginning to find out if there is existing demand for your product idea. So this video is going to cover the concept of form validation. So you have a product idea, you think it might be viable, you've done some keyword research. Now this is one step before getting people to pay for it, but it's overall where you create a form to find out more about potential customers. You're then going to advertise this form through different social media channels, as that's going to be a free medium. There is a video covering on how to get free traffic as well. But if a person is willing to fill out the form, that's a little stronger indicator that this is a pain point that they have that they're looking to solve. It's also a great place to ask questions and find out more about what exactly they're looking for. So in terms of what form builder to use, there's a tool called Tally, and it's completely free. Many other form builders are going to charge you based on the number of responses, but you get unlimited forms and submissions for completely free here, so it's a really easy one to recommend. So if we take a look at an example, this was a form I built using GoZen. I got a lifetime deal, so I wasn't using Tally at the time, but it was for a product called Copywriting Robot. And what I did here was ask questions that I wanted to know. I wanted to know things such as what type of website did I have? Was I using Shopify, Saas, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, Wix? Was it another product? This gave me an indicator on which audience I should be targeting. I wanted to know how many stores they have. Did I need to build features for many stores? Was that going to be a differentiator? I was looking for how many products they have. That just gave me an idea of if they actually needed to get these product descriptions written. Maybe they had 2 products, and in that case, they probably didn't need an AI tool to go and write them for them, as it was meant to be a time saver, and it becomes more beneficial the more products they had. I was also looking at how do they create and upload new products to your store? Is it a daily process? Are they doing it once a month? Once a year, maybe they're adding new products. And in that case, probably paying for a monthly subscription might not have been worth it for them. I was also looking to see how long their store had been running. And based on the number of products, I was also curious on what plan would suit them better. Now, I'm not a huge fan of lifetime deals, but maybe package credits or monthly would have been a good option for them. So this was just an initial survey I ran, and based on the number of responses and the types of responses I was getting, this gave me some validation on if it was an idea worth pursuing. At one point, I had an idea for an all-in-one conversion tool for Shopify merchants, as if you look across the board, there are tons of different options. A lot of them do different things, so I was like, what if I combine all of them together into one tool? So I created a quick survey. I didn't start building anything. I wanted to get some validation first, and I got no responses. I launched different shorts. I tried tweeting about it, posting about it, and no one really cared. So this gave me validation not to build the product. I didn't spend hours, hundreds, thousands of hours building something that was super beautiful, feature-rich, did everything I wanted it to do, and then try to release it, as that would have been a huge waste of time. In terms of the number of responses, I wouldn't say there's a hard and fast number you're trying to get. It's going to be something that you're going to have to feel out. It's probably a good idea to collect their email addresses. This way you can contact them, maybe set up a meeting so you can find out more about the problem. And you can also discover if it's something they're actually willing to pay for. If we go through one last example here, an idea for an influencer finding tool where we would do all the work. It wasn't a platform where you could see influencers. It was just straight up, you send us your brand information and we'll send you a list of 5 different influencers. So running this survey gave me an idea of if it was something I wanted to pursue. So I asked questions such as what was their brand name, what niche they're in, what type of influencers looking for, and how much they're looking to pay. And the responses I got were $20 to $30, $30 plus, $20 to $30, less than $20, $30. So overall for me, it wasn't necessarily something I wanted to pursue, but I also got information such as which platforms they were looking to target. So it looked like a mix of Instagram and TikTok, so if I was going to pursue this, I would probably do both platforms. But this concludes the video on form validation, and it's going to be a stronger indicator than keyword validation, and it's going to give you insights into potential customers, what their pain points are, and the features they'd be looking for, as well as how much they'd be willing to pay. So this is going to be the strongest form of validation, and that's payment validation. In terms of what this is, it's accepting payments or pre-orders as if your product was live. You can even accept pre-orders and say, hey, if this doesn't work, we'll refund your money, but you want to reserve this great deal. Maybe it's a really good monthly discount. You can also do lifetime deals. You could accept the money and then refund it, or you could never actually process the payment. But the act of the customer essentially whipping out their credit card and being willing to use it is exactly what you're looking for. As when you're talking to people, they might say, hey, I'm super interested in it. I think it's something I'm going to buy. But when it comes to actually paying for it, taking their credit card out, giving you money, they might hesitate. They might say, hey, I actually need to think about this. It's a good idea, but I'm not sure if I actually want to pay for it. And so by getting them to commit to that final step, you're going to have a true understanding of their willingness to purchase your product. There is also a less strong way to do this where you're not exactly accepting payment, but you're essentially forcing the user to get to every point up to the payment process, including selecting their plan. If we take a look at an example, a famous one is Buffer, where they created a super basic landing page of tweet more consistently with Buffer. So choose your times to tweet, add tweets to your Buffer, and then Buffer does the rest. So that was their concept they were testing. They forced the user to select their plan, and they were tracking who clicked on what plan. And once they got there, that gave them an idea of how many people clicked through from the landing page to actually getting to the end of it. And then they would also collect the email. I think you could make this stronger by making the customer go through a credit card inputting process and then not charging them. You could also do something where you're saying, reserve your plan now, and you might not charge them for 60 days as you give them a 60-day free trial beforehand. And if you don't decide to build the idea, you can just cancel those subscriptions. But in that case, they put in their credit card information, they've showed you that they are interested in your product and that they will eventually pay for it. And that is a much stronger indicator. But you don't actually have to charge them, but this way you don't have to pay back the credit card fees. So that is payment validation, and that's either accepting or getting a customer to input their credit card information and not actually charging them. This is the strongest form of validation as a customer has basically put their money on the table. They really want to buy your product. It's a pain point that they really need solved, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. This is the strongest form because you can talk to customers over and over again, and they might say it's a great idea and that they'd be willing to pay for it, but you'll never actually know until you ask them to pay. And so that's why payment validation is the strongest form of idea validation. Let's go over how you can get traffic to help validate your idea. So whether you're using form validation or payment validation here, what you'll really need is just a simple landing page. Overall, keep it simple here. You don't need tons of information. You mainly just want a title. So why would someone want to use your Saas? A subtitle, so you can further explain the benefit. Also explaining that it's going to be a waitlist, and then it is free to join the waitlist here. The last thing you'll need is a call to action. This is typically just an email address. We're collecting information so you can contact them on a later basis. You can also have a form to fill out afterwards. This is great for form validation. So getting their email first and then asking them a series of questions to find out more about them. Looking for their biggest pain points, as well as what industry they're in and what position they have. This will give you a better idea of your target customer. An example here is called User Maven. All they had here was their title, their subtitle, and they're collecting email addresses. And they did have a form afterwards. They had some images here on what the product might look like, but their main benefit was instant actionable analytics to grow your Saas business. So making it very clear here what the Saas is addressing. So let's go to actually getting in traffic. One of the best methods to do so to get really high quality validation is to use groups and forums. So in here, you want to be helpful, build relationships, as well as be honest. So this is from User Maven as well. And it's an example of what they posted in a Facebook group. So it's that they were looking to help some companies which are having trouble setting up product analytics. At the end of the exercise, you'll be able to see a bunch of different information here, such as attributing customer acquisition by source, find slipping away users, get power users of your product or a specific feature. And they're also honest why they're providing this benefit, and that they're building their product and it's a tool specifically built for Saas product analytics. And they have a bonus here that you'll be put on a special founders plan, and let me know if you're interested and I'll send you the details. So overall, 71 comments and 33 likes, so pretty decent engagement here. And with these points, they're making sure they're looking at their target audience. So in terms of where to post, it's going to depend on your niche, as maybe you're building a Shopify app. There's different Shopify forums and groups. There's different threads. If you're building a WooCommerce app, there's specific ones for those as well. If you're going for Saas founders, indie hackers can be a great way to find other micro Saas founders. Hacker News can be a decent way, a little more competitive here. There's specific Reddit groups for just about everything. This also applies to Facebook groups. I'd say these would be probably your two primary methods here, as you can get quite detailed and you can find the exact audience you're looking for without having to do a ton of filtering. So again, just be honest, be helpful, and be friendly here. Some founders will opt in the route of just building a presence in these groups first. They provide a lot of value, so when they actually do go to post something, they start to have people recognizing with them and engaging with the post. In terms of paid methods, there are two that we'll go over. It's Product Hunt Ship as well as Beta List. For Product Hunt Ship, it's a toolkit for makers to ship awesome products. You can build an audience for your product quite easily. We talked about building a landing page, and so this tool actually allows you to build beautiful landing pages that are fully customizable. They also have embeddable widgets, so you can capture interest on your website, blog, or web app if you have one already. It also has an embeddable email form, so you can capture those emails and it's going to be added to a Product Hunt database. It also allows you to do things such as talk to users to build better products through surveys, direct messaging, and group messaging. You also get analytics, A/B testing, and different webhooks. I believe this tool is around $80 a month, so if you're just using it for 1 month here, you can really find out some cool ideas. The next tool is called Beta List. It's very similar to Product Hunt, where people can post their products, and people are always going on here to discover tomorrow's startups today, and they have a pretty big newsletter, so they're sending out these products as well. So very similar to the functionality of Product Hunt overall, so it can be another alternative to utilize. I'll be using ChatGPT to find the next great micro SaaS idea. So the way this video is going to work is I'm going to use ChatGPT to generate some really cool SaaS ideas. Now from there, we're going to take the top 5-ish ideas, and then we're going to go and research them together. I'll go do some validation to see if this idea is actually feasible. I'll also take a look at the competitors so we get an idea of the landscape to make sure if it's something we might actually want to enter in. I'm also giving away something for free in this video, so make sure you stay until the end of it. So as I'm recording this video, we're currently in Q4 right now. This is the time of year where a lot of online shopping is done. So I thought, let's check out e-commerce ideas. So let's focus on maybe Shopify or WooCommerce. But let's go and ask ChatGPT what it thinks is a great opportunity to build a SaaS in. So as you can see, I have ChatGPT loaded here. I'm just going to say, give me SaaS ideas for e-commerce, something I can sell in Shopify or WooCommerce. Those are two big e-commerce platforms. So let's see what ChatGPT comes and responds to me with. All right, so I now have my responses. As you can see, I have 15 responses here. So let's go and filter through some of these ideas, and the ideas that I like and I think could be an opportunity. It's also going to be something that is possible to build. Let's go and add them to a document here, and then I'll go and research each of these opportunities with you so you can see how I would research these. All right, so on my left-hand side, I have my ideas, and on the right-hand side, I just have a basic note editor. So let's go through these one by one. So the first idea is going to be an AI-powered personalization tool. We're going to use artificial intelligence to analyze user behavior and provide personalized product recommendations. I think that actually might be an interesting one here. I haven't seen too many tools like this, and it will be catered towards a larger store. If you're not getting too many visitors, it's going to be hard to analyze what to sell. So I think this is going to be catered to larger, maybe Shopify stores or WooCommerce stores. And because we're catering to these larger stores, they'll probably be making more money here, so we can charge more for our product. I'd say this is a pretty premium tool as well, and it's a one to easily justify the expense. Let's say if my tool can generate an extra $3,000, $4,000 a month, it's going to be no problem to go and sell my tool for, let's say, $500 a month. And that's a pretty high value there, and it's one that's easily justified. So I'm going to copy this idea, and I'm just going to put it into my spreadsheet here. And let's move on to the next one. This one's inventory management system. So develop a comprehensive inventory management system that syncs seamlessly with e-commerce platforms. So it can help e-commerce businesses automate their stock control, order management, and forecasting. So I'll leave this one as a maybe here. It's going to depend on the store and what type of solution they used for inventory. And this can be very specific to the store. So I'm just going to skip this one for now. The third one is going to be e-commerce analytics and reporting. So we can build a robust analytics tool to help store owners gain insights into their performance. So you can include sales analysis, customer behavior tracking, and competitor benchmarking. So I like this idea here. I think it's a more complex SaaS idea, but it's going to provide a lot of value. Again, this is going to be more beneficial to the more orders that a store has. So we're going to be targeting that higher market or higher end of stores. So I'm going to paste this one here. I know with Google Analytics, the new update, I believe it's Google Analytics 4, it's made it much more complex to find the same reports, and it's kind of abstracting a lot of that data. So I've heard mixed things about it. I know I've had some reports that I used to pull that just kind of aren't there, or they're buried in different places. So if we can go and simplify this in something really built for e-commerce, as Google Analytics is pretty broad, maybe I can include reports on things such as lifetime value, and finding the highest level of customers, so you can then go and contact them as a store owner, or you can advertise specifically to that demographic. The next one is going to be subscription box management. So we're selling subscription-based services to handle recurring billing, shipping, and customer management. This one would be a little bit of a niche product here, as I don't see too many subscription management services, although they are around. I'm just going to skip this one here just for personal preference. The next one's going to be e-commerce chatbot. So we can create tailored for e-commerce assistance for customer service, sales, and support. These bots can handle FAQs, provide product recommendations, and even process orders. So I like this idea here. I've seen this around. As with e-commerce, there are really just some main questions you get. Where is my order? When is it shipped? What's the tracking number? Can I request a refund? Can I do an exchange? There's really not going to be too much variance here in the requests that you're going to get. So if you can automate a lot of this using an AI chatbot, this can increase customer satisfaction as well as decreasing the support costs for you and your team. So I'm going to add this one to the list. I'd say overall, these are some pretty decent ideas here. I'm currently on 6 and I already have 3 written down that I think might be viable, although we can go into that more in detail. The next one's returns and refunds management. So we can design a SaaS solution that simplifies the return process for e-commerce businesses. So this could help reduce churn and enhance the overall shopping experience. So this one, I'm not sure the premium would be able to charge here, as I do know that refunds are built out of the box for many e-commerce solutions. So let's skip that one there. The next one's going to be a multi-channel selling tool. So businesses can easily sell their products on multiple marketplaces like Amazon, eBay, and others. I have been a Shopify merchant before, and I do know that exists for quite a few different apps. It's a pretty crowded category, and those look to have good reviews and do well. So let's move on to the next one. So number 8 is going to be e-commerce SEO and content optimization. So help businesses with product listings, descriptions, and content for search engines. This can include keyword research, on-page SEO, and content recommendations. So I'm going to take this one here as number 8. This will be our 4th item in the list. I think there's an opportunity to integrate some type of AI in this as well. ChatGPT is really good at digesting quite a bit of data. We can maybe try to connect this to a keyword research tool so we can give really nice reports on how they are doing for their SEO. We can automate a lot of this too, maybe even provide rewrites or recommendations that they can just add in one click without having to manually rewrite things themselves. So number 9 is e-commerce email marketing automation. This is also a pretty crowded category. So let's move on to number 10. So customer loyalty program. So it allows e-commerce businesses to create and manage their own loyalty programs, including points, rewards, and referrals. So with any business, there are 3 ways in which you can increase the amount of revenue you're generating. You can get more customers, you can increase the frequency of purchase, you can also increase their average order value. So this one is a great one for increasing the frequency of purchases. So I like this idea here, as that's a really core way to drive revenue for e-commerce businesses. So I know typically too, most of the money is made on the back end. Now that is true for most businesses as well, is if you can break even or make a little bit of money on that first sale, including things such as ad costs, the more sales you can make on the back end, the more profitable you're going to be. And at that point too, the customer trusts you. They're part of your loyalty program. They know that your product is real. It's hopefully good quality. They've had a good experience. They're going to be much more likely to purchase with you again. And that's where customer loyalty programs can be really good at incentivizing that and increasing that frequency of purchase. It's such a common thing as well, as any grocery store, at least the ones that I go to, all have point programs. And this really incentivizes you to go back to the same store, because instead of going to another grocery store, you're going to go to the one you have the points loyalty program with. As the more you shop there, the more points you build up and the more rewards you're going to get. And so those are 5 different ideas we have listed. We have our AI personalization tool, our e-commerce analytics and reporting, our e-commerce chatbot, our SEO and content optimization, and our customer loyalty program. All right, so now that we have our ideas listed, let's go and search some of these up. And then for each of them, we'll take a look at the competitors out there, and then we'll do some keyword research to see if there is some search demand. And that's just going to give us some idea if people are already looking for this type of service. So let's start here with the AI personalization tool. So I'm just going to copy AI-powered personalization. And two of the biggest e-commerce platforms are Shopify and WooCommerce. So what I'm going to do is going to look through the Shopify App Store and the WooCommerce extension store, and we can see what existing different competitors might be out there. So let's start with Shopify here. So I'm going to go and paste this. You can see I've already searched it up, AI-powered personalization. And so off the top, I can see a few ads being run for a sales chatbot using ChatGPT. I can see Rebuy, 500 reviews here. So this looks to be the most popular one. You can see dialogue. So let's open a few of these up, see how much they're charging, just to get an idea here of the market demand. So I'm going to open this one up first, this one, and this one. So let's take a look at Rebuy. So this was the most popular one. So it's industry-leading AI, end-to-end personalization. They're going to use artificial intelligence, push machine learning, so modern no-code, low-code custom software. So you can do upsells, cross-sells, A/B testing. It's a holistic solution. So we take a look at some of the pricing here. We can see it's free for up to $1,000 of additional revenue, and it goes all the way up to $249 for up to $10,000 in additional revenue. And it's going to be capped at the number of orders. And it's going to help increase sales through increasing the average order value through AI recommendations, dynamic bundles, and upsells and cross-sells. So it has predictive analytics, machine learning, reporting tools. So overall, it does quite a bit here. So it looks just based on this, we can see one of the most liked features from the actual users are things like recommendations, bundles, and upsells and cross-sells. And so if you're looking at a specific store, I can imagine something where you're going to digest all the existing data, and you can see, okay, users are adding this product and this product together, or they're creating these bundles themselves. So you can go and dynamically create that based on past information. So next, if we take a look at Shura product recommendations, so it's going to be similar for recommendations, upsells, cross-sells, daily deals, and merchandising. More personalized recommendation, different custom discounts. So this one's charging a little less here at $49.99, but still pretty decent priced plans. It has a full dashboard. You can understand what's happening in your store. So this one's pretty popular too, with 4 reviews and 5 stars. The third one is going to be frequently bought together. So it's going to use AI again for product-powered personalization. So it seems to be the core feature that everyone is building for. This one is much cheaper at $9 a month. It looks to be pretty new here in the last few months, so they might be doing this just to get more users at the beginning. They're actually using all the products and orders, and so your store's historical and real-time data refined to optimize the conversion rate. Next is going to be Search AI Discovery, so you can empower shopping with personalized searching and filtering tailored to everyone. This one's actually more expensive at $129 and $499. So the pricing is definitely on the more expensive app, especially if we just ignore this frequently bought together. And it seems that people are willing to pay a premium for this. But there are some existing competitors here, but apart from Rebuy, most of them don't have too many reviews. So it could be possible that there is room for another competitor here. For this, we'd probably want to do some idea validation and go speak to some Shopify merchants and see exactly what they're looking for. Now that's going to apply to every idea I go over here. This is just the basic overall to help narrow some things down, but you definitely want to speak to merchants. You want to do your research so you're getting the feature set that people are actually looking for. So if we go to WooCommerce, let's search up AI powered personalization. So we can see there's really not too many apps listed here. We can only see an AI assistant by Koi Lab, and so it's going to be cutting edge tool for smarter, more efficient and profitable online store. You can post products faster, get insights to reviews, and write compelling and long and short form product descriptions with AI. So we can see there's actually no personalization tool around AI on WooCommerce. So that could be an opportunity here to release for WooCommerce, as it doesn't look like there are many competitors here. We've seen some of the competitors. Let's go to keyword research now. So this is a tool called Ubersuggest. You can use Google Trends. You can also use a traffic tool in Google Ads. That one is free. Ubersuggest is paid, but they essentially all do the same keyword research ability, where you're just going to get estimated search volume here. So I'm going to set this to all locations, set the language to English. I'm just going to paste this in here again. So AI powered personalization. I might add e-commerce to the end of it to give it a little more specificity. So let's load this and see what it says. All right, so I can see no search volume here for the exact keyword. I can see AI personalization. So let's take this and let's run with this keyword and see the different ideas it comes up with. This one does have some search volume here at 90 searches per month. If we look at this just general trend here, we can see it has started to increase, probably as people are getting more used to the idea of AI personalization. So I can see AI customer service. This one actually has way more searches, and that is related to the idea that's also in our sheet. We can see specifically to an AI chatbot for customer service. So that's good to note for going forward, and I will be searching that up again. But let's look at AI product recommendations. Now, this process is going to be something that takes some iteration, as you're going to just be trying to find the keywords that people are looking for. Maybe it's personalization engine or product recommendations. That is what the apps here have. So if I go to AI product recommendations, I can see 90 searches. So that's a little better than what we were looking at before, as this one is more direct than AI personalization. And so to not spend too much time on this one idea, let's take this keyword here and the total volume is 90. So let's go back to my sheet here. I'm going to add this in quotations. I'm going to write 90 searches. So let's go and add this one here. And let's move on to e-commerce analytics and reporting. So again, let's follow the same process. We'll go through the Shopify App Store, the WooCommerce App Store, and we'll do some basic analysis here to get an idea if the idea is viable and people are already looking for it. So let's go back to the Shopify App Store. I'm just going to search for analytics. So I can see different apps here. I can see a Google Analytics integration, so real-time live analytics. I can see a profit app here. Google Analytics again, Triple Whale, which is a analytics solution. I can see better reports, so reporting and analytics, so you can export your data. So let's take a look at a few of these. We'll expand these into a different tab. We get an idea of pricing and what people are looking for and what they like in these products. And I'll open up Polar Analytics as well. So this one's real-time stack, so live analytics here. This looks to be an interesting visualization. But if we look at the pricing, so free, so you can see online store visitors at $9 a month and $39 a month. So we can see live maps, expect abandoned carts, daily reporting, and it's going to be set at the number of active views. So overall, this has pretty good reviews. Let's go to a 3-star review. We can see the complaint is they don't show the number of visitors in real time. This looks to be an inaccuracy here, so not too much to improve on there. So let's go to the next one. This is better reports. You can explore data and automate reports. So you can see at $19 a month to $299.9. It's going to be based on your Shopify plan, it looks like. And so this app helps with reports and informed decision making, and it's going to praise them for their user-friendly interface. So overall, it looks to be that there is a pretty dominant player here at Better Reports. They have 920 reviews and a perfect 5-star rating. So it looks like a lot of merchants liked this app here. Next is Polar Analytics. So you can turn your data into profit faster. So this one starts at $400 a month. Unlimited connectors, unlimited data, unlimited users. So this one gives you quite a bit of data with really good UI. It definitely looks like there is demand for these apps here. There are some pretty popular ones. Quite a few different analytics apps. I can see profit analytics. I can see report analytics here. So it looks to be pretty crowded on the Shopify App Store for this niche. So we'd really have to go through all these apps here and try to look for things we can improve on and what customers don't like. Let's go to WooCommerce here and we'll search for analytics as well. So I can see Google Analytics, Google Analytics Pro, ad scale, so more Google Analytics, sales analysis. So not as many custom apps here that cover analytics that are not Google Analytics. So we can see sales analysis, so get insights, key metrics, international sales revenue. So there is one app here. So similar to the previous idea we looked at, there might be more of an opportunity on WooCommerce as it doesn't look to be as crowded. Let's go back to Ubersuggest and we'll go to e-commerce analytics. So I'm going to search this idea here and we can get our total keyword volume to see how many people are looking for this. And I spelled analytics wrong, so we can see that nothing has shown up. But now that we see the total volume data, we can see around 1,900 searches per month. So this one has quite a bit of more demand than the previous one we looked at. And that probably justifies having so many competitors. So we can see analytics for e-commerce, 1,900. Analytics in e-commerce, so we can see different types of spelling here. Blot analysis is not related, analytics. So maybe the estimated search volume looks to be closer to 4,000 as that these 3 keywords combined. I'm just going to round that out to 6 actually. That's probably a little more accurate. So let's go and add that to my sheet. So definitely more competitors for this one, but more search volume. That just gives us an idea here on the overall demand searches. So if I go and quote this keyword here, that gives us this idea. Now, as I'm going through this video here, you can see my recording time is getting quite long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to split this up into multiple videos. So I'll do e-commerce chatbots as the last one here. Then in another video, I'll cover these two ideas. Let's go over e-commerce chatbots now. So I'm just going to cover or copy chatbots here. Let's go again to the exact same process, the Shopify App Store. I'm going to search for chatbots. I'm going to change this to AI chatbots as I don't want to focus on the regular customer service chatbots that are meant for teams. So I can see SmartBot, CheerLink AI chatbot, Xena AI chatbot. So there are some chatbots that are existing here, but if I just look at the reviews, I can see that it is probably pretty new. So it might be one to break into if we can have a really good UI, a good feature set. So if we go and validate the idea to speak to merchants, find out exactly what they're looking for, how easily they want it to be set up, that can help us sneak in there and get a lot of customers that way. So this one's Smart AI Chatbot. So it's an effortless integration with Shopify, unlock higher consultation volumes with personalized invitations. So they're going to price this based on the number of chats, $30 a month and $60 a month. There's some decent pricing there. The next one we look at has 3 reviews. This one is free right now. Sometimes free apps are available on platforms such like this as they're just trying to get users at the beginning. So let's ignore that one. This one's AI Chatbot and AI Chat Quiz. So we may do an integration of those as well. This one's also Rep AI ChatGPT Sales Chatbot. This one is priced at a much higher level here at $99 a month for the starter plan. And it's going to go up to $500 a month for up to 80,000 visitors. Really positive reviews though, so we'd have to either match this or probably try a different angle or try to add more features that they're looking for. Again, that's going to be through maybe trying to read through these reviews and find things that people don't like. And so people want a friction-free and adding this automated feature. We can see that the rep got smarter over time. So people are probably looking for a seamless integration. And if you can justify increasing the conversion rate here, that's an easy sell, I think. But again, it looks like these don't have quite many reviews, so it's probably a new category, especially as ChatGPT becomes more powerful, that we can go into here. So I'm going to copy AI chatbots and let's go to WooCommerce and I'll search for the same thing. So again, the only thing that's going to show up is AI Assistant by Coilab. So again, there are no other AI apps available on WooCommerce. So this may be an opportunity. As I go through these ideas, WooCommerce doesn't seem to have as many extensions as Shopify does. It could be a good and bad thing. It could be a good thing because there's less competition, but it may be that these WooCommerce merchants aren't looking to use as many extensions as Shopify merchants are. Let's take this and go to search results here, and let's go search for AI chatbots. Maybe I'll just add e-commerce here just to help specify it a little bit. But overall, a pretty new technology, as if you consider ChatGPT has just been released for around a year at this point, maybe a good opportunity to go into. Now that I'm searching this up, I can remember last time we were looking for AI personalization. This did show up with quite a few searches. So if I look at just AI for customer service here, I can see around 480 searches a month, and AI customer service is 5,400. So if we look at 5,400 searches, that's not just for e-commerce here. This might be an opportunity where rather than focusing on an e-commerce platform, we can create a generalized customer service tool that is maybe integrations with Shopify or WooCommerce, but it's going to make it super easy for people to integrate all of their maybe order data, their FAQs. And so it's a plug and play to just about any site. So I'm going to copy AI customer service here, as that may mean something we want to rethink here, just not e-commerce chatbots, but maybe a broader platform. Being said, we don't maybe want to go too broad. We might want to focus on a specific niche. So trying to find one that has less competition maybe and a decent volume of searches, or that's something that niche is looking for. So that may require more research there on where we want to find our angle, but it might give us room to expand in the future. So I'm going to put AI customer service, 5,400 searches. And that's really something we would want to take a deeper look into. So with our idea validation, going to speak to different people in different niches to see what they're looking for and the demand out there. So let's take a look at our last two ideas here. And we'll be looking at e-commerce, SEO, and content optimization. I'm just going to copy the keyword SEO here. Let's check out the Shopify App Store first. So if I type SEO, I can see there are quite a few different SEO apps available. So image optimization, image optimizer in SEO, Tapita, Smart SEO, Booster SEO, SEO King, SEO Ant. So if I scroll down here, there are quite a few different SEO apps available on the Shopify App Store. If we take a look at one of the top ones here with over 5,000 reviews, we can see they're doing things such as offering a free lifetime plan. And it does look like merchants are really recommending this app. It has over 5,000 five-star reviews, so probably a pretty crowded category on the Shopify App Store. I think if we were looking at a way to come into this market, we'd probably have to go on the higher end. As you can see, this one has a free plan, and this one only goes to $19 a month. I think if we went on the higher end, maybe more of a white glove service with really good customer support, and not deal with any smaller Shopify stores, only dealing with the larger ones. And we'll take up everything end to end, from maybe your image optimization to every single thing you need to do SEO-wise to boost your site's ranking. If we head over to the WooCommerce marketplace, let's type in SEO again. You can see there are less apps here. We can see an SEO product filter, permalinks by WooCommerce, storefront. So I'm not seeing nearly as many SEO apps. In fact, I don't really see anything that does the core offerings offered on the Shopify App Store. So again, with our other ones, this might be a great opportunity here to just take what's available on the Shopify App Store and focus exclusively on WooCommerce. So if we dive back to Ubersuggest here, let's take a look at a few searches. Maybe SEO extensions, WooCommerce, as we did look at Shopify, and it looked to be a pretty crowded space there. So I'm going to hit search and let's go check out the search results and see if it's something that people are actually searching for. So some of my top hits here are SEO WooCommerce. So 1,300 searches a month. I can see a WooCommerce SEO plugin as well. So let's just round this out here to around 1,500 searches per month, and we'll note that down in our sheet. So we have around 1,500 monthly searches. So now let's move on to our last idea here, and that's a customer loyalty program software. So let's copy the keyword customer loyalty and let's follow the same process. So we go to the Shopify App Store. Let's go and paste this in. You can see a loyalties and referral app. I can see Smile, which is pretty big, Rise.ai, so gift cards and loyalty. So there are a few loyalty apps that look to be available. Let's open up a few of them here and see what they're offering. Maybe there's a different positioning element or a different feature set that is missing. So if we scroll down to the pricing, we can see $729 a month for 4,000 monthly orders included. So definitely they're able to charge at the higher end here. So if we go over to the AI summary and we take a look at some of the critiques, some mention a need for more features and difficulties with the cancellation policy. These were addressed promptly by the team. So we might want to go through the reviews here and check out the features that are missing. This might give us a clue on what we can add in to help differentiate our product from the marketplace. But definitely some premium pricing here. Maybe we change up how many orders are included. We might come on the cheaper end, maybe somewhere in the middle. We can do more research here on a few of these other apps. We can see this one is much cheaper here at around $69 a month on the growth plan. So this one does have good reviews as well, it's 4.9 stars. So over 700 reviews here. But overall, it definitely looks like a popular category, but I think it's definitely deservedly so, as it's something can really increase revenue for merchants. This could be an interesting one here. I don't see a ton of different ones. And so maybe we're looking through there to find more features or a different pricing angle we can come in on the Shopify App Store. So if I search on the WooCommerce extension store, I can't really see anything along those lines under customer loyalty. Though again, probably a very good option here to take a look at this more heavily, so we could come in with our own extension. So let's dive into Ubersuggest one more time here. And so we'll go to customer loyalty. Maybe we'll just stick with Shopify this one. We could also add it just e-commerce and maybe customer loyalty, WooCommerce. So this time let's cover multiple keywords here and see what it's going to give us in terms of search volume. So we can see customer loyalty, WooCommerce has 0 searches. You can see 140 for e-commerce and 20 for Shopify. Maybe I want to change around some of these keywords maybe to do a little more in-depth dive, but just for now, we'll just leave it at 160 searches per month. So 160 searches, then we'll link these together. But overall, that concludes the video here. We went over 5 different ideas generated by ChatGPT. We did some research here to help validate the idea by going through the Shopify App Store as well as the WooCommerce App Store. There's probably also the ability to check out different platforms as well that provide e-commerce services. Maybe it's looking at Squarespace or WordPress as well, because I know there are other e-commerce solutions available on that platform. And lastly, we took a look at the search volume just to get some estimations on if there is existing demand for this type of product. This section is going to cover different topics around building. We'll go over how to create addicting products, how to create great onboarding experiences that users will love, and how to decide how to build your MVP and what you actually need to add in terms of features, so you're not wasting your time developing things that nobody is going to use. I'll be covering why you should be building your micro SaaS yourself and not paying someone else to do it. So when you're first starting, it can be easy to think that you'll just pay someone else on Upwork, Fiverr, or hire a developer at lemon.io to build you an amazing SaaS that will blow the competition out of the water. Although it's possible, let me convince you why you should be building it yourself instead. The first reason is going to be the cost. So I did a quick search on Upwork to look at Node.js developers, and you're looking at least $35 an hour. We can see $35, $40, and $50 here for the top freelance results. So if you take that dollar amount here at $35 an hour, and let's extrapolate it and take a look at how much it would cost to build an MVP. Let's take 100 hours as the time it's going to take to build it. That's going to be $3,500 in total, and that's going to make it the break-even cost for your micro Saas. So you need to make at least this amount to be net zero, and that's not even including anything such as ad costs or hosting costs or anything along those lines. And so that MVP cost also isn't going to include any maintenance and building more features, which you're 100% going to need as your micro Saas progresses. And so these costs are going to add up over time. So reason number 2 is going to be speed. So on a regular day, I'm going to wake up, brush my teeth, and make a coffee. But then I'm going to go log in, check my customer emails, and there's almost always something to fix. If it's something technical, I'm going to need to go investigate, maybe write a new feature, maybe write a fix. And for many of these, I'm going to be able to finish these in just minutes, upload a new version of my product, and then solve that issue for the customer, making them super happy that I was able to fix it quickly and creating an overall positive experience. I don't have to contact my developer. It's going to be even worse if they are in a different time zone from you, as you're going to have to wait at least a full 12 hours, depending on the time of when you check. Then you might have to clarify some features, go over what exactly you need built, and then have it uploaded. So if you're looking at quick fixes from a customer perspective, it's going to shock many of them. It's given me some great reviews and tons of happy customers when I'm able to address any technical problems quickly. And this is just speed around bug fixes. What about new features? Many customers have things they want to add and things they want your product to do. So if you're adding those in, it's going to be so much faster if you can go and add that in quickly yourself or map it out yourself. It's going to save you money and time there. So if we stretch this out here and you compound it, if you make 1 to 5 changes a day, that's 365 to 1,825 changes a year. So that's a really fast pace of development. And imagine trying to message your developer 1,825 times just for that initial request. That's a lot of extra communication there, and a huge time delay as then they have to go and develop it. They might also not be the only product that they're working on. They might have 3 other clients that they have to prioritize, and yours might not be number 1. So in conclusion, you should be building your micro Saas yourself. Whether you're going and building it yourself if you're a programmer, even if you're doing the no-code route, building it yourself is just going to save you so much in terms of cost as well as time. Speed is definitely essential here when you're first starting out, and that's something you really miss out if you're working with a freelance developer. I'll be covering different topics in this video, from building in public, going open source, and doing stealth mode for your micro Saas. So first, let's go over building in public. And it's the practice of openly sharing the process, progress, and challenges of creating a product, business, or project with the public, often through social media, blogs, or online platforms. Twitter tends to be a super popular platform for building in public, as it makes it super easy to share different status updates on how things are going. So building in public has become quite a popular marketing tactic, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. You're sharing your progress, interacting with the community, other founders, showing what you've built and how it's going. It's a story that many people want to be a part of, so it's become popular for that reason. In terms of if you should actually be building in public, it's really going to depend on your audience. Do they care? Do they want to see what you're doing? Do they want the updates? There are many popular products that were built in public on Twitter, but they targeted other founders, and other founders like to see other founders' stories, so it was a great way to do marketing there. Building in public can also be a useful way to build an audience, as it makes for interesting content. To note, building in public is also one of those things where it's better when you're small and it gets worse as the product or company grows. As many products start from building in public, and they actually close off the results, as if your MRR starts to get quite large, it could be a signal for other competitors to come in and take up market share. If you're looking to see a super cool build in public story, I would recommend checking out Banner Bear. The founder does a great job at documenting their journey as they bootstrap their small SaaS company to $1 million in ARR. So they have different recaps at points in their journey. So this one's a full recap from 0 to 36K in monthly recurring revenue. There's 0 to 10K and 10 to 20K, as well as many other lessons along the way. This is a marketing vehicle for them, and it's helped the founder get popularity on platforms such as Twitter. So if you're looking for a cool story, I do recommend this one. Let's talk about going open source. So this is just sharing the source code so that anyone can view, use, modify, or distribute the work. In terms on if you should do this, you'll need a really compelling reason to do so, as once you've released your product to be open source, anyone can take it and create an exact copy of it. It also becomes much harder to monetize an open source product because people may think, why would I pay you to do something if I can just download it and do it myself? It can be a marketing tactic as well and an easy way to get some distribution and word of mouth. If we take a look at an example, it's going to be called Plausible. And so it's easy to use and privacy-friendly Google Analytics alternative. And so they made this completely open source. And the source code is available and accessible on GitHub so anyone can read it, inspect it, and review it to verify that their actions match their words. And so if you want to do your own infrastructure, you can self-host Plausible. There are many people who would rather Plausible host it for them, and they're willing to pay for it. So this was good from a reputation point as well, so you can see exactly what Plausible Analytics is tracking. And they've really positioned themselves as a lightweight and open source alternative with no cookies and fully compliant with GDPR, CCPA, and PECR. So from them, going open source was a really good route for them to take, as it helped create more trust as well as help them with their marketing. So lastly, let's talk about stealth mode. This is where you hide or don't tell anyone about your product until you launch, so no competitors can steal your features or your idea. We've seen big companies do this. They come out of nowhere, launching their product, it's ready to go. They spend years building something, and I'm going to recommend you just don't do this at all. You're not actually going to know if anyone wants your product until you release it. You give it to them, you let them sign up, you let them use it, and you let them pay for it. While there are some companies that have been successful doing this, usually they're funded by really large banks or VC firms, or they're funded by someone with a lot of money, so they can go years without releasing anything, and then they can launch with a lot of marketing. You're not going to be able to do that if you're building a micro SaaS. There are so many companies that come to mind, such as Magic Leap, which really hid their product from people for a long time, and then when they finally released, it wasn't up to par with everything else. I think they had around $600 million in funding, which is a huge amount. So don't think about doing stealth mode. You need to release early for your product and get it in front of potential customers. And then you're going to find out if it's something they actually want to use. You might have even built the wrong feature set. So make sure you're not doing stealth mode. So I went over 3 different strategies here, from building in public, going open source, and doing stealth mode. Building in public and open source can be viable ways, as they're good marketing strategies, but it is going to depend on the niche of your product and how you're going to monetize it. For stealth mode, I definitely don't recommend that there, as you need to release early. Let's go over what tech stack you should be using to build your micro SaaS. So for hosting, pick an established provider to ensure they stay in business. You don't want to pick some startup that might go to business in a year, and then you have to migrate everything over. But other than that, it really doesn't matter. Work with what you know. Your customer isn't going to care about whether you're using the latest framework or the newest technology. They only want the product to solve their core pain point or issue. So don't spend time researching it. Stick with the programming language you know, use that, find the framework you need to launch it, but other than that, don't spend a lot of time comparing and contrasting. You also really don't want to move to something new if you've never used it before and you have an alternative that you know well and you can upload things quickly. Because if you're maybe thinking to yourself, oh, I want to learn a new framework or a new language, as I think that's going to be a cool way to upload my micro SaaS, it's going to slow you down. Rather than just building something, you have to learn how to build it, and it's going to slow down your process from getting value into the customer's hands. So if you're starting building your MVP, they're not going to know what you're using. So if you're delaying the time, it's going to take you longer to find out if it's something they actually want and if you're building the right thing. It's also going to decrease your motivation, as you have that extra friction from launching your product. So in conclusion, when picking your tech stack, use what you know. Don't worry about using the latest framework. You can maybe eventually switch to that if your product is super successful, but at the beginning, you want to get as launched as quickly as possible. And really, apart from just picking a provider that you know is going to be around for your hosting and for your database management, maybe going with one of the larger companies is probably a safe bet. Your customer is not going to care at all, so don't even worry about it. So let's go over the concept of building addicting products. I think this is a useful framework to have when building things, as it's going to utilize the habit loop, which can make your product really sticky. So overall, it's not a super complex topic, and it only requires 3 elements. So the habit loop consists of the trigger, the action, and the variable reward. So if you can organize your product to follow this loop here, this can help keep your users coming back and back again. So the first step in this is the trigger. So if you're going to use social media as an example, the trigger could be just, I'm bored sitting here on my phone and I want to kill some time. And the action is going to be opening up an app such as Instagram. And then there's going to be what's called the variable reward. So each time you open up Instagram, it's not going to be the same. There's going to be new posts and new videos that keep you coming back. And so this is going to reinforce the habit loop here. So next time they feel bored again, deep down, they're going to know that they can use your app. In this case, it's going to be Instagram to fix that problem. And this loop gets stronger and stronger the more it's reinforced, and it's going to become deeply ingrained in the user. If you're a platform such as Shopify, the trigger can be used through notifications. So let's say the trigger is the Shopify merchant gets a sales notification. It's accompanied by a money sound. So it's going to help increase that trigger here. The action is going to be opening up your Shopify app. And the variable reward is seeing the new sales come in. So it's going to reinforce this habit loop here by keeping you in the Shopify app. And if you're using the Shopify app to check your sales quite a few times a day, this is going to reinforce that Shopify is a good platform to be on as you're generating sales consistently. Bringing the habit loop into your product is going to especially be important at the beginning. So if a user signs up for their free trial, you want to make sure you're getting this trigger action variable reward loop going, as it's going to get them logging back into the app and utilizing your product during the trial period. If they feel like they've gotten value during that trial period, they're going to be way more likely to keep subscribed and continue to pay you. It's one of those things, once you get integrated into someone's workflow or a business's product suite, it's going to be much harder to remove you. And the key there is really getting into it, and the habit loop is a great way to do that. I'm going to cover the MVP launch framework or the minimum viable product framework. This is going to help give you the exact steps you need in launching your SaaS product. So before I dive into the exact steps, let's take a look at some overall notes. So first, you should be embarrassed by what you released, but it should be functional. If you're not embarrassed, you waited too long to release your product. Note, you also don't want to be a buggy product. People think that releasing an MVP is going half-assed into something, when in reality, it's more close to just half of what the features you were planning to build, and it's probably going to be less than that. When releasing your MVP or your minimum viable product, don't worry too much about the UX or the perfect product design. If it doesn't solve the core issue or problem, the user isn't going to care how pretty it looks. And so that last part, you should be only solving what you've determined to be the core problem by speaking with customers, doing your validation. That's what you're trying to build. You don't need all the extra features. Let's dive into the 4 steps now. The first one is identify the core features. The second one is to cut down the scope. Number 3 is establish the tech stack. And number 4 is build and launch quickly. So for identifying the core features, you want to determine what's essential for your product. You have to provide value to the users. These should be the most critical and fundamental features that address your target audience's primary needs. You don't want anything extra. It's so easy to try to build all the extra features that you think a customer might find useful, but you first need to get clear of that core assumption and pain point that you're solving and only build that. If you're building a calendar tool, it may be easy to think, oh, we'll add video conferencing in. It's not going to take that long and it's going to enhance the overall value. But is that the core pain point, or is that something extra you want to build? So you've identified the core features and what you want to add to your MVP. Step number 2 is going to cut down the scope even further. You're really just trying to solve the core problem. Users should be able to sign up, solve their problem, and that's it. You don't need anything else. When you're identifying the key features or core features, you're going to add too many. That's just human nature there. But what you need to do is take it down and cut it even further. Design is also going to be secondary here. So don't worry about any fancy things you're going to add. Cut the scope down. Focus on excellence, but only on one thing. Step number 3 is going to be establish the tech stack. So this is where you're going to be laying out the programming languages, frameworks, and tools that are going to suit your needs. It's going to give you a step-by-step breakdown on what you need to accomplish and what's going to be used to deliver your MVP. The core thing here, though, is stick with what you know. Don't try to learn a new framework or host your application on a provider or database that is brand new. Focus on the big players that you know are going to stick around. The last step, number 4, is going to be building and launching quickly. How fast can you launch to test your core assumption of the product? Does this feature really need to be included? Again, it's a balancing act between the two. People tend to think this is an excuse for being half-assed, but you should be embarrassed about what you released. So you don't want a super buggy product, but you want something that solves that core problem. So if you've cut down your scope, determine the key features, and determine your tech stack, this arguably shouldn't take too long here. Again, don't really focus on the perfect design or the perfect features. Just really try to solve that one thing, and that's going to simplify your whole process. So again, the overall steps are identify the core features, cut down the scope, establish the tech stack, and build and launch quickly. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your MVP isn't going to be the final version of your product. It's going to be very basic, and after you've determined that it's something that people are willing to pay for and they actually want, you can then start to poll them, talk to them, and start to add more features, start to redefine the design. But really, with your MVP, you just want to get launched quickly, and that is something that most founders do not do. They spend too much time perfecting everything, and a lot of times they just never release it as they're just embarrassed by the product. They don't think it's going to be useful. Let's talk about product onboarding. It's going to be something that is absolutely vital to your product's growth. So in terms of what it is as an overall, it's how you guide and handhold your new users from their beginning state, so nothing is set up, to their end state where everything is set up. And in this end state, they're going to be happily using your product. That's when the user can get that aha moment or understand what is working. It's going to make everything click for them. They're going to see the value, and they're going to be much more likely to stay with your service. So try to create a little visual example here. So you have your blank state. You want to move them to the state where everything is filled out. It's when you're using your product, you know where everything is, and what you're using is probably completely set up in your account already. So if you have a demo store or demo version of your product or anything along those lines, everything's going to look at its optimal state. It has all the features configured, maybe all the integrations are set up. But if you're a new user and you're showing up to a product, it's just nothing there, you're going to think, what is the point of this? I don't want to have to go and create everything. I want it already set up when I load that full state, so it's easy for me to get into. You just want to decrease that friction as much as you can. And so in terms of ways to do this, it's really forcing your users to exactly the point where you think they're going to have a solid use case for your product. So you can do so through wizards, so it's those pop-up wizards. You can see onboarding tours. I've used things such as React Tour, where it's basically a button, they click on it, it's just going to give them pop-ups and guide them around your Saas app. And it's going to make it easy to understand where everything is and what's next. Going quickly back to wizards as well, it's something I've used frequently. It's basically an initial setup screen. We're going to get a few different settings that the user can then go and figure out. So when they load your app for the first time, they've gone to the wizard and they've set up those initial steps. So everything is going to be working okay. There's also checklists. So it's basically different pop-ups on your website saying you need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Using a checklist makes it easy for the user to visually see what they need to do next. They're not just confused with their blank state and they don't know what to do. There's also email follow-up. So maybe they're setting up and they're just going and doing something else. You want to make sure you're following up with email. There's different tools to do behavior-based emails where maybe they've set up a feature, maybe they haven't visited a specific page they need to visit. You're basically following up, trying to force them to that particular state. You can also just reduce friction in all your steps. So if you have a 50-step sign-up sequence or wizard, no one is probably going to get through that unless their need is very high and their pain is very high there. You want to both make it complex enough to get them where you need them to go, but simple enough they're not overwhelmed with friction. You can also provide learning guides and knowledge databases. So these are extensive documentation and videos where if a customer has a question, they can easily search something up. It is a paid solution, but something I've used frequently is called Help Scout. It's both a customer service platform as well as a knowledge base. If you want a combination of both, you can easily get a free chat bot or chat widget with Talk To, and you can build a manual FAQ page. But creating these online databases make it really easy for the customer to find something and figure out exactly what's going on. So in a nutshell, that is product onboarding. It's really just about getting your customer from that blank state to that filled out state. They know how to use your app, they've set some things up, and they're getting actual value from it. Next, let's go over how you can set up subscriptions for your app. My personal recommendation is to use Stripe. It's extremely easy to set up. They have their own checkout page integration, and you're only going to pay them on a successful payment, and it's basically the credit card fee, so it's around 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction. There's no monthly fees here. There's no need to integrate any other app. Stripe, I believe in the last year, has come out with subscriptions. I've used them. They work really well and they're really easy to set up. So let's go over a setup here, and I'll just log into my Stripe account. And once you're on the home page, you want to go over to product. And what we're going to do is we're just going to create a test product. I'm actually going to go to test mode where I create this, and they're really easy to set up. So what you want to do is you want to go to add product in the top right. It should be a purple button. Just have to confirm my password here. I want to give it a name. I'll just call this a standard plan. You can give a description. It is optional, but it will just show up underneath the product name. You want to give it a product category. This is for tax purposes, I believe. You can add an image, which is going to be optional as well. Just go and add a logo here. So I now have my name, my image, and next, this is where pricing comes in. It used to be you weren't able to set up reoccurring charges in Stripe. Now you can. And you basically just want to make sure that the reoccurring tab is selected. I'll leave it as standard pricing. You can also do other things, just the customer choosing the price, volume pricing, graduated pricing, and package pricing. I'll just leave this as standard pricing for now. We'll go over to US dollars. I'm not going to include tax in the price, and I will set the billing period to monthly. You can also do daily, weekly, every 3 months, every 6 months, yearly, and have a custom option. You can also meter this as well. Let's say you have a restriction. You can add this in. I believe it's via their API. I'm just going to leave this simple here, and I'm going to put $29.99 a month. I would ignore this free trial section as we're going to go and add that on the payment page. And this is the legacy version. You can hit save product. If you're creating multiple plans, what you can do is if I go back to products here, you can then create another plan. So I can list this one as a premium plan, and I'll just speed through this one here, given a price of $49.99 a month, billing on a monthly basis. To add an annual plan, you can just set the billing period to yearly. Now let's go how you can integrate this with your website. If I go into standard plan again, I can go down to create a payment link here under pricing. And this will bring me to the payment page. Here, if I go under include a free trial, I can check this off, and then I can set the free trial period. So it's going to change the billing language as well. Let's say my free trial period is 14 days. The customer will see 14 days free, and then it's going to show them the price afterwards. You can set after payment to redirect the user rather than showing a confirmation page. So once that is done there, we can just simply go to create link in the top right, and this will create us an actual payment link which we can then copy. So let's say I copy this and I go to a new URL. You can paste that in. They can let the customer check out using this link. It's really easy just to use Stripe's payment links themselves, as it's going to have all the security built in. You don't have to worry about anything on top of that and reconfiguring any fields. And depending on the device as well, it can show things such as Apple Pay or Google Pay to help speed up the checkout process. So in a nutshell, that's how you set up subscriptions with Stripe. A super easy process thanks to Stripe. And there should be another video in this course located towards the bottom section, but it will also show you a page which you can then apply for reduced Stripe fees. Depending on your region, it can be around $10,000 or $20,000 in fees processed, which can save you quite a bit of money at the beginning. So let's go and build our front end here. So what we'll be doing is rebuilding the idea generator that's included with the course. And in this video, we'll be starting from scratch here with a brand new file. So in terms of what we'll be using to build this, we'll be mainly using React, and we'll be using Tailwind for our styling. If you've never used Tailwind before, it's basically a styling framework for React that makes it super easy because we can write our styling within our div tags and our class names rather than having to create a separate style sheet. It also reads very well, so I prefer using it, and it has a lot of pre-built styles, so it makes it really easy to get things up and running. So to start, I have a blank folder open. Let's go and create a new folder, and I'm just going to call this front end here. I'm going to save that. Next, I'm going to open up my text editor. So I personally use VS Code, and I like it because there is a built-in terminal. So I'm going to click on File on top, then go to Open, and I'm going to go open the course application front end that I just created. So I'm going to click Yes, I trust the authors. Then I'm going to press Command J. You can also press Control J, and it's going to open up my terminal at the bottom here. And so what we need to do first is we're going to use Create React App to create our basic file structure, and then we're going to install Tailwind so we can add in our styling super easy after that. So if I go to the Tailwind website, they're going to show you these steps here. So I'm just going to copy this as this is the code we need. I'm going to go back to my terminal here and expand this a little so it's easier to see. I'm going to paste that in here. So it's going to be npx create react app, And for the project name, I'm just going to call this idea generation for course. I'm going to press enter there, and it's going to go through the create React app process. And it can take a few seconds to a few minutes here. So I'm just going to wait for this to complete. So it's now finished. So if I open this up, I can see the basic create React app components from my modules to my public folder to my source folder. If you've ever used React before, you'll be very familiar with this process. So next, let's go back to the Tailwind website. And what I need to do is install Tailwind. So I'm going to copy both of these commands here. And I am going to go down one to cd idea.generation-for course. And that's going to get me in the file folder here. So I'm just going to copy and paste those commands I just looked at from the Tailwind website, and it's going to install Tailwind now. So if I go to package.json, remove this so it goes down a little bit, I'm going to zoom out, and I can see Tailwind's been installed nicely. So that's next step, and we need to go and configure our Tailwind template path. So I need to create a new file here called tailwind.config.js. I'm going to go back to my application here, and I can see that's been created automatically when I installed Tailwind, and it looks to be everything I need here apart from the content section. So I'm not going to copy that specific section, go to content, I'm going to paste that in. Next, I need to go adjust the index.css file that was created when create React app was run. So I'm going to go and copy this again, and I'm going to go back to my file. I'm just pressing Command Tab on my Mac here. You can do Control Tab on Windows. It just makes it easy to switch between these windows. But I'm going to go to source, and I can see index.css. I'm just going to select all of it and then paste in the Tailwind code. So let's go and test this out that Tailwind is working, and then we can start building the rest of our front end. I'm going to copy this h1 tag here. I'm going to go to the app.js file. I'm going to go to replace this header here with my h1 tag that I just copied over, and it's the classic hello world. In the bottom of the terminal, I'm going to click in and press npm run start. And this is going to run a local instance of my React app. So it's now loading hello world, and it looks like the styling has been applied as there is underlining, bolding, and a text size change. Maybe I want to make this text medium. So if I go and reload this, I can see it's automatically been updated. So that's the installation and setup section of creating our React app initially, and then installing Tailwind so we can begin to add our styling. So now that we have Tailwind and React set up, let's go install some React packages here, or NPM packages that we're going to be utilizing in this front end. So I'm going to close this here by pressing Control-C. I'm going to zoom in a little more so you can see exactly what I'm adding, but it's going to be these packages here. So I'm going to install React Router, React Router DOM, React Toastify, React Icons, as well as Axios. So I'll leave this written in the description below so you can just copy and paste it. But let's go back to my terminal here, and I'm going to press npm I for install, and I'm just going to paste those packages there. And it's going to go install all of these now, and we will be utilizing these later. So let's just get them imported. So they're now installed here. I'm going to reload my app by typing npm run start, and everything is working as normal. So first, let's do a basic outline of what we're going to build. To start, we're just going to build a one-page idea generation page, where it's basically going to be, you can type in your pain point as well as your niche, and it's going to send it to our backend, which is going to take that response, communicate with OpenAI, create the AI response, and it's going to send it back to our front end, and we're going to load that on our React page. So we're going to map this out here. We're probably going to have a title is going to be at the top. We're going to have a input field. We might have another input field below it. For each of these, they might have labels on top, and then we'll have a submit button at the bottom. So I'm going to bold this here just so it stands out a little more. Then underneath, when the person has received the response, if I just copy this into a different field here, these will still be displayed, but then below that, we'll see our response from the API. So it's probably going to be something like the idea and then description of idea. So if we have two states here, it's just going to be basically our submit form and then our response received. The other thing I'll probably add to the form here is there'll be a clear button. So rather than having to back out of each of the fields, you can just clear these really quickly. And we can have this in either maybe before or when the response is received. But overall, pretty basic UI here. So let's go and actually build this out. So what I'll do is I'll build it here in app.js, and then we'll start moving things around once everything looks nice. I'm going to add a overall div to our element as we will be moving this. I'm going to remove this class name here as it's not needed. And so let's go class name, and then we can start writing in some Tailwind classes. So to start, let's give it an overall layout here. So I'm going to say H is going to be screen. So the height is going to be the screen size. I'm just going to give this a background color for now so we can see how it looks. So we're going to make this BG late 900. We're also going to define the font here. So I'm going to say font sans for the entire application. I'm going to say that the overflow is hidden, that everything is positioned relative. So I'm going to save that and let's see what it looks like. So if I reload the page here, I can see we have our background. It's stretched to the full page. That looks nice so far. Next, let's define our actual form element. So I'm going to give it a flex layout. I'm going to say flex column. I'm going to tell it for a flex wrap as well. And then within here, I'll load my component. Actually, we'll put this in another folder as we'll be defining state with that file. So I'm going to click on source. I'm going to click on new folder. I'm going to call this pages. And for the page here, I'm going to call this idea generator page.js. So first, let's import state. So import use state from React. This is going to let us use state here. Then I'm going to find my overall component. So idea generator page going to be equal to a function, which we can then export and then export default idea generator page. So let's define our component here that we're going to be returning. So return div. I'm just going to write in another div. And I'm just going to call this idea generator page. We will be removing this, but it's just to see that everything is hooked up properly. So I'm going to go and copy the idea generator page. I'm going to go back to my app.js. I'm going to import this here. So import from /pages/idea generator page. And I'm just going to paste in the name here. And then for now, I'm just going to insert my component between those curly brackets. So let's go back to my page. And if I reload the page, I'm going to say text white so we can look for it. And I actually need to find this as a separate component, not inside those curly brackets. And now it is displaying here on my page. So I can see idea generator page, which is the exact text that I have loaded here. So now that I can see it's loading, I added some text white just so I could go and find that. Let's go create our basic components here. So we'll have our title. And if we look back at what we're creating, we have our title, input field, then a submit button. So let's go and build this first. So the title, I'm just going to call this create your micro Saas idea. Now from there, let's go and create an input field. I'm actually going to relabel this to input. I'm going to write some stuff in now that I will use later. So the type is going to be text. The placeholder, I'm going to leave this blank for now. On change, which I will also leave blank for now, and the value, which I will leave blank for now. So I'm going to go and copy and paste this line below as we need one more input. And I'm going to add our button here. I'm just going to label this button for now, and we'll add our styling later. So if we go to reload our page, we do need to put the on change in. So let's go and create our state first, and we'll call them the target audience and the interest, as those are the two inputs here. Let's create our first element of state. So I'm going to call target, set target equals to use state, and leave this as blank. I'm going to copy this line below, and we'll put our interest and then set interest. That copied as interval, but that's okay. We'll just write that in there. So next, let's go and add our on change. I'm going to write these as functions here. So brackets, the event, right arrow. We call this set target. I'm going to change target actually to target audience. I'm going to call this target audience as well, as I think that's a little more descriptive of what it is. So set target audience e.target.value. And I'm going to copy this exact code, put it in the on change at the bottom. And instead of set target audience, I'm going to call set interest. Now the value, I want this to be what the state is. So target audience, and then the value below that is going to be interest. So I'm going to save that there, and that should get rid of my errors. So if I go back to the app here, I can see two input fields next to each other. I'm going to add some stylings to my inputs so we can actually see that things can be entered. So BG, we'll get this gray 400, and we'll say the text can now be black. So I can now see if I type into this, it is changing the states and it is updating. Okay. So I'm just going to copy this below for now. We're going to go add some final styling later, but this just makes it more visible so we can see what we're typing actually has an impact on the page. So what we did here was created our idea generator page component. We created our state. We created our basic form inputs so that when we type into the forms, it's going to update state, and then we can take this and eventually submit it. All right, so let's go and add some styling here just so everything looks a little nicer, as that looks quite nice. But if we load our component, it looks pretty bad, and it is all hidden in the top left here. So first, let's make this a full width. We'll give it some padding, so margin on the left and right. And on the top, we'll maybe give it MX4 there as well. And maybe I'll change this to 8. Actually, it should be 4 and 8. I think that might look a little better. So let's reload that. That looks a little better, but let's center this on the page here. So let's write text center, and that will center all our elements. So I can see it's all centered nicely. I've also changed my MY to 20 as I realized it was MX. If I go back to my page here, I can see it looks a little nicer on the page. Now let's go and make sure my elements are aligned one after each other. As you can see, my two input elements are next to each other. So let's add flex. We'll go flex column. We'll give it a gap of 4. So if I reload that, I can see it's now been loaded and everything is probably stretched a little too far across. So I'll add max width LG, and that's going to say max width is the large. And now that we did add that, it's going to change our text center. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to remove the MX, and rather I'm just going to add MX-auto. It's just going to auto center things horizontally. And so I think that looks pretty good there. So let's go and add some title styling, and then we'll go add our styling to our button. So as you can see here, a lot of this is just trial and error, and you're basically trying to make things look nice by adding different styling. It always helps if you have a target or a goal of what you're looking for. And so it's a lot of just manual adjustment. So for my title here, let's give it a class name. I'm going to say text 3XL. I'm going to center this with text center, and I'm going to say font bold so it stands out a little more. So create your micro Saas idea. And now I can see my two inputs. So if I type into them, they're still working okay. Let's go and style my button. So again, I'm going to say class name here. So I'll give it a padding of 2 and a padding X of 2. I'm going to call items center, font semi-bold. I'm going to say width full. Text is going to be size medium. We're going to give it a background color of pink 800, and we'll give it a hover background color of pink 600. So the button's going to lighten when we hover it over it. Instead of button, I'm just going to call this submit. Actually, let's change that to generate description. So let's save that, reload the page here. So if we hover over it, we can see our hover effect is going, and now it says generate description. So let's add a few bits of styling here. We'll say rounded XL, and I'll say text center. So that centers our text here. I think rounded XL might be a little too much. So let's go rounded medium, and I think that looks okay. So let's go and update our inputs next. So we'll give them labels. So I'll say div, your target audience, and I'll do the same above our second input. And instead of your target audience, I'm going to say your interest. So let's save and take a look at the page there. So we can see your interest and your target audience. I'm actually going to remove the your. I think it looks a little nicer without it. But I'm going to give these both a font of semi-bold. I'm just going to copy that, and let's bring it down here to our next div. I'm just going to paste that in. So reload the page. I can see our interest and target audience. For styling, let's put these both in their own divs together. So I'm going to put the input and the title here in one div, and then the input and the title of the next div together. So it's going to group them together a little bit, and I will need to add width full to my inputs here to get them back to their regular size. I'm also going to add a MY of 2 and a MY of 2 to our titles. And now I can see my target audience, interest, and we both have our placeholders, which I will update here. And for an example, for a target audience, let's just say Shopify merchants, and then for a placeholder for interest, maybe it's AI, SEO, tools. So we reload that here. The placeholder text color has not been set, so it's not going to display yet until we add that in. So let's say placeholder black for now. So I can see AI SEO tools, and I'll say the same for above. Placeholder black, just so it stands out and we can easily read what's there. And as I start typing, it's going to instantly replace my placeholder text. So we started to add some styling to our idea generation. We've added a title styling, we've centered all our elements on the page, we've added our different labels for our different inputs, and we've added the placeholder text, and we've also styled our button here so it looks much better than it did before. And it's going to have the hover effect as well for generate description. So lastly, let's go add our component at the bottom that's going to take in the ideas generated. So if we go back to our sketched out template, we have our response received, and we have the response from the API, so idea and description. So it is going to be an array. Within the array, we'll just have a bunch of ideas in a string. So for now, let's just say it's going to be in the format of idea, semicolon, description. So let's go back to our text editor here. And so I've just minimized our input form area. I'm going to create a new div, and I'm going to give it some overall styling. So the class name is going to be width full. I'm going to give it a max width of large, and I'm going to center this element on my page. Now we said the ideas are going to come in a string, so I'm just going to create an example array of strings at the top. So I'm going to call this idea generation response here. I'm just going to make this an array. I said it would probably be in the format. We can always adjust this later of idea description. I'm just going to add idea number 1 here, add a comma for our different elements, and I'll paste this 3 times. Label is 2, 3. Now that we have an example array, let's go and add it here. So what I'll do is I'll loop over each element, then I'll return a separate element here. I'm going to call idea generation response dot map. I I will need to add these in curly brackets, so it's going to register. And then for each idea, let's create our function here. I'm going to return a div. I'll put this in brackets. But first, let's parse this. So it's probably going to be by a semicolon. So let's just say our title is equal to our idea. We're going to split it by the semicolon. Then we'll select our first element. So I'm going to copy this below. And this time it's going to be the description. It was split by semicolon again, and I'll take the second element. So in our return, let's return a div. So this one will be the title here. So let's give it class name. We'll maybe make this font bold. So font bold, curly bracket, title, and copy this line below. I'm going to remove the font bold, and under title, instead of that, I'm going to write a description. So now if I go and reload my Chrome page here, I can see the idea, description, idea, description. So I probably want to add some spacing between the two of them. So again, let's give each element some styling. So I'll say class name MY4. I'm going to center these as well. So text center. And I'll give each one a border. So border, I'll give it a white border. So border white. And let's see how that looks. So each one has a border now, and they are going to be separated by some spacing. I'm going to add an overall title for this section. So div, and I'll say your ideas. Now what we'll do on the final version as well, when we connect the two, is we'll hide this element until there is an actual response. Class name, text 3XL, and I'm going to say your ideas. So for the border here, I'm going to make this rounded. I think that looks a little nicer. I'm also going to add some padding on top and then padding on the side just to give it a little more spacing. You can even underline the title idea just to help it stand out a little more. I could also add some uppercase that's going to help it stand out just a little bit more. Instead of just a text medium, I'm going to say text large. And so now we have our two states here. We have our input form field, and once the ideas come back, this is how they'll be displayed here. So what we did in terms of our code is we added just in a sample array here of our idea generation responses, as that's how we'll make them look. And then we're basically looping over it, separating the title and the description, and then returning an element for each of those. So let's go and create the skeleton backend for our idea generator. So to begin, you should already have Node installed on your computer, and we're going to use npm init to create our skeleton here, and then we'll begin to add to it. So I'm just going to hit npm init. I have created a new folder called the backend, and I've opened up my terminal already, and I'm within this folder. So by pressing and entering in npm init, it's going to give me my walkthrough in creating a package.json file. So I'll zoom in here. But to give it a backend name, I'm just going to call this backend idea generator course. And it can no longer have capital letters, so I'm just going to call this background idea generator course with no cap. Version 1, I'm okay with that, so hit enter. Description, I'm going to leave it as blank. Entry point, index.js, that's fine. Test command is empty. Git repository, I'm not going to set this up now. Keywords, hit enter. Author, enter. License, enter. And that's okay. Hit enter again. Then it's going to initiate my package.json file. I can see my name, version, description, as well as these scripts here. So again, I'm going to go install some npm packages right away. So npm I. I'm going to install Express, and I'm going to install the OpenAI npm package, as that's what we'll be using to generate our descriptions. So if I go to my packages, I can see now are both installed. And what I'll do next is change the initial script to start. So if I run npm run start, I'm going to change this to node server.js. As we're going to create a server.js file, we'll be hosting our Express. If you haven't used Express before, it's basically a framework to handle HTTP requests. And so we use these to create URLs that our front end can then hit our back end with, and then handle that data with the Open API or the OpenAI API, and it's going to send the response back from there. So first, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this my server.js, as that's what's going to be loaded right away when I start my server. Then from here, I'm going to set up my Express routing. So first, I'm going to import Express. So const Express is equal to require Express. I'm then going to instantiate an instance of Express. I'm just going to call it app. I'm going to call the Express function. Now from there, I'm going to define the port it's going to be on. I'm going to give it port is equal to process.env for environment port, or it's going to be 4000. Next, I'm going to create my listener so it can listen to requests to this port here. I'm going to say app, so our Express instant.listen. I'm going to give it the port number. Next, I'm going to create a function here that's going to be called. I'm just going to console.log listening on. I'm going to make this dynamic actually, and then I'm going to include my port in there. So when I start my server, it's now going to be listening, and then it's going to tell me that it is listening on this port here. So next, I'm going to create a new folder called controllers, and I'm going to create a new folder called routes. Now for routes, I'm going to call this API routes.js, and let's go and fill this out here. So again, I'll be using Express to create my exact routes that can be called. I'm going to import Express at the top, just correct the spelling there, acquire Express. So next, I'm going to create my instance of a router. So const router is equal to express.router. Then I'm going to create my individual routes. So I'm going to call router.route. And I'm just going to call this route create idea generation. You can call this whatever you want here. I'm just going to call it that. It's going to be a post request, and it will call a function, although we don't have that created yet. So next, I'm going to go into my server, and I want to define when the API router is going to be called. So I'm going to import it at the top. Before I do that, I will need to export it in my API routes file. So I'm just going to export the router. So module.exports is equal to router. And I misspelled that there, so let's go and correct it. So that means I can actually import it here in my server file. Require routes API routes. So I'm going to call app here. So app.use quotation /API/v1. And I'm going to call what is my router here. And I will actually rename that. So I'm going to select both of them by hovering over one, hitting Command D. That's going to select both instances. I'm going to call this API router, just to make it a little clearer here. So there's a /API/v1 included at the end of the URL. It's going to call my API router, which is exactly what I'm looking to do. So next, let's go and create my open API controller. So I'm going to go under my controllers, right click, hit new file. I'm going to call this open AI controller. And we're just going to include all the logic in one function here, where we'll take our response from our front end, and then we'll send it back to the front end after it's been generated from the AI. So what we'll need to do first is import the OpenAI API at the top. So it's const OpenAI is equal to require OpenAI. So next we need to instantiate an instance of this. So const OpenAI. I'm just going to change this to OpenAI instance here, so it's a little clearer. Going to be equal to new OpenAI brackets, curly brackets, and then we have to define our API key. And for now, I'm just going to leave this as process.m.openAI or OpenAI API key. And we'll go and set this environment variable up later. But next, let's create the skeleton of our function here. So I'm just going to call this create OpenAI idea generation. It's going to be equal to a function with request response. That is the syntax from Express. I'm just going to wrap this in a try catch here in case there are any errors. So try catch console.log error. I'm just going to write my response out in case it is successful. So res.status200.json, because that's our response format. We're going to send it back in. I'm going to say status success, and then the data will be defined up here when we do create that. So I'll just leave it empty for now. So I'm going to export this function here. I'm just going to go and copy the name. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the file. I'm just going to call exports.the name is equal to the name. So I'm just going to copy this again here, go to my API routes, and then I'm just going to put the function in. So I'm going to say const curly brackets, the name of the function is equal to require. I'm going to back out of this folder, controllers, OpenAI controller, and in our post request, it's going to be this function that is called. One more thing to do in our server is to define our express JSON limits. So I'm going to place this above here under app is equal to express. I'm just going to call app.use express.json, and we'll set our limit to 100 KB. So there are some additional packages I would like to install at this time. Some revolve around security, and .env revolves around setting up our environmental variables. So we have helmet, cores, xss-clean, as well as .env. So if you install these here, we can then go and import them into our server. So let's do it one by one at the top. So const.env is equal to require.env. Then we also have const cores is equal to require cores. Const helmet is equal to require helmet. Lastly, we have const xs is equal to require xss-clean. So those are the packages I installed. So let's go and just enable them quickly. So first, we're going to ignore a lot of security here with cores, and we're just going to say app.options is equal to all for cores. This enables us to send data to our backend without it being blocked. We're also going to call helmet, so app.use. Then we're going to call helmet here as a middleware. And we're going to set some options. Frame guard is equal to false. Cross origin resource policy is going to be false as well. And lastly, we'll just call app.use XSS, and then we'll just call it there. Using helmet and XSS does prevent us from different types of attacks here, so they are generally recommended to use. It can be up to you on what security practices you do want to implement though. And lastly, let's configure our .env file. So I'll do so at the top, just calling .env.config, and then brackets, curly brackets, and the path will be ./config.env. Now I'm going to go and create that file, and I'm just going to call it config.env to match what was listed in our server. Lastly, let's go and add one of our config variables, and that's going to be our OpenAI API key. So I'm going to go to my config.env, I'm going to write it down equals, I'm just going to write a random string of digits now, and I will add my actual API key, which you can get from OpenAPI. And so to get that, if you log into OpenAI here and you select API, we can actually go and get an API key. You go to the top right under your account name, go to view API keys. You can go create a new secret key here. I could call this course test key, create my secret key. Now to note, I will be removing this key right away and not actually using it. But basically, you're just going to copy this one and paste it in your .env file. So if we go back to it here, I can just go and paste that in, hit save, and let's try running our server at the bottom. If you do start your server, you will get an OpenAI client error key. And so the way you fix that is if you go to your server.js, you just actually want to paste this .env.config. I'm going to put it above the API router. And so if we launch our server again, we should see no issues here as it's listening on 4000 as the port. And I just did log this quickly as I was debugging a little bit there. But in terms of what we did here, there is quite a bit. So to start, we created our server, we created our express routes, we installed some basic security here, we created our port, we created our config.env file so we can store our more sensitive information, passwords and keys and so on, created our API routes file. We can create our route that we defined in our OpenAI controller, where we instantiated an instance of OpenAI, which we will then be calling when we start to link our application together. So a lot covered in this video, but we're moving along nicely. So now let's begin the process of linking these together. So we'll take our front end, we're going to send a post request with 2 items. It will be our target audience and our interest to our backend. We'll then take this and start generating a response with OpenAI. We'll get that response back, and then we'll send it to our front end and then display it. So to start, let's go to our front end and we'll add our API request to localhost 4000. So if I expand this open here a little bit, let's go and create an API folder. I'm just going to call this API. And then I'm going to create a new file here. I'm just going to call this create idea request.js. So for this API request, I am going to need Axios, which we installed first. So import Axios from Axios. Next, I'm going to create a function here. I'm just going to call it create idea request, create my function skeleton here. And then at the bottom, I'm going to export this. I'm just going to call export default the name of the function at the top, as this will be our only function in here. Now, before I actually go and create my request, I'm going to create a new file at the side here. I'm going to call this .env for environment. I'm just going to define my React server URL for the API. So I'm going to type react_app_server_URL. This will make it easier so when I go and post this to a live version, I can just swap it out in the environmental variables. I don't have to switch it around each time as I'm continually updating something on my localhost version. So I'm going to type this as http://localhost:4000, as that is the port we defined on the backend. So now that I have that, I can go back to my API folder here for our create idea request. I'm going to zoom in, and now I can write await Axios bracket curly bracket, and the method is going to be post, as we are sending a post request to our server. I'm going to write a comma, the URL here. I'm going to do some string interpolation. So I'm going to write money symbol, curly brackets, and be process.environment. So env is going to be react_app_server_URL. And let's just confirm that's exactly what I wrote here in our .env file. And I can just actually just copy this. It's probably a little safer here. I'm just going to paste it over. Then I'm going to add a /API/v1. If I go and open up my backend here and I go to API routes, I can see we created this as /create idea generation. So I'm going to paste this here at the end, and that should be the URL we're sending this to. And I do need to add an async here for my function and a closing quotation tag for my method. And moving on, we can set the data here, and that's just going to be the data that's passed through our function. So in summary, we have await Axios, method is going to be post, the URL is going to be what is set in our environment, which is our localhost 4000 /API/v1 /create idea generation. And the data we're going to pass through is the data we'll pass through in this function. So I'm just going to copy the name here, and let's go to our pages and the idea generator page. So at the top, let's go and import this function. So import create idea request from quotation // I think it's one out here, so // API/create idea request. And so now we can call this function when we are submitting our data here. So now that we have the function we can call, let's go and create an additional function in here that is going to handle the submit. So I'm going to write const handle submit is equal to a skeleton function here. So what's going to be passed through is the event. We want to prevent a page reload, so I'm going to call event.prevent default. I'm going to call that as a function. And what we'll be passing through is the state here for our target audience and our interest. So I'm going to call await, and what we're going to do next, and I do need to add an async here, is call our create idea request. So I'm going to copy that, come down to the await, enter in that function, call the brackets to invoke it. I'm going to pass an object down, and it's going to include our target audience and our interest. So now that we have our handle submit function, let's go down to our button. And if I expand this, I can see it here underneath our inputs. So let me scroll down, and under generate description, I'm going to add an on click to create a quick skeleton function with my arrows here. E is equal to handle submit and pass the event through. So next, let's actually go and test things and make sure it's working. Okay. So I'm going to first just comment out my actual request, and I want to go and log my state here to make sure that's being tracked correctly. So console.log, and it's going to be my target audience and interest. If I zoom in a little more, that's a little easier to read. If I go back to my web page, I wrote test down, generate description, I can see test and test. And so I opened up my logs here by right-clicking on the page, going to inspect, then going to console. I'll go back to my code here. Let's go and make sure that this is going back to my server. So I'm going to remove that, uncomment this, actually open up my server, and I'm going to hit npm run start. So I'm running, and it's listening on port 4000. So in my OpenAI controller, I'm just going to console.log, and what I'm going to log is I'm going to go get those two items from the request.body, and those two items are my target audience and my interest. So I have target audience and interest, and I'm just going to go copy and paste those in the console.log. This way I can confirm that my front end is actually sending the right data to the back end. So let's go to my Chrome here and test. So I'm going to click generate description, and there is an error, it looks like, with our post URL in our Axios request. And if you experience that same error, it's actually quite an easy fix. So if we go back to our front end, you basically just need to close your instance of your React version or React app. So you press Control C or Command C, and then you're just going to run npm start again. And the reason we need to do this is to initiate the .env variables or the environment variables. Your server has to be restarted. So if we do the same thing again, test to our backend, and I go and just reorganize my windows here so we can see everything. We can see test has been logged, as that's exactly what we did here. Now that our connection between our front end and our back end is working okay, we'll go through with the OpenAI request, and we'll send it back to our front end. All right, so let's open up our backend here, and we'll actually go and create the request to OpenAI. And then we'll take that response and we'll send it back to our front end. So what we'll do first is we'll add async to the top of our function here, so we can use await to send that request. But first, I'm going to define the prompt that we're going to send. So I'm going to write const OpenAI prompt, and it's going to be equal to, I'll do some string interpolation again, and I'm going to include both the target audience and the interest. The target audience, money symbol, curly brackets, interest. Then from there, I'm going to write the rest of my prompt. And the prompt is going to be create 5 new micro Saas ideas, numbering them 1 to 5 based on the below information. And then for each idea, include what the idea is. And then in the space below, I'll put target audience, semicolon, period, interest, niche, semicolon. This is going to correspond with the target audience and the interest that comes from the user. I'm going to hit save to record that in. Next, let's send our response to OpenAI. So I'm going to write const OpenAI response is going to be equal to await OpenAI instance is what we defined up here. And then I'm going to call .chat, .completions, brackets, curly brackets. I'm going to create a space here. The model is going to be quotation, chat, or not chat, just GPT-3.5-turbo. Now you can use a different model here. It doesn't have to exactly be this one, but at the time of recording, this is the latest model. Then I'm going to hit comma, then I'm going to type messages, semicolon, square brackets, curly brackets, roll, semicolon, quotation, user, comma, content, semicolon, quotation again. Actually, ignore the quotation. We're just going to write the OpenAI prompt here. So essentially, we're sending a request to the chat completions of OpenAI, and the model we've defined as ChatGPT 3.5-turbo, and the messages is just going to contain one message, and it's from the user, and it's going to be our OpenAI prompt that we defined up here. Now, next, let's write some guards to make sure that the OpenAI response contains what we need. So if OpenAI response and OpenAI response dot choices and OpenAI response choices length and OpenAI response choices. It has an element in the first element of the array in the response here, and we're going to check if that has messages in it. And then I'm going to add my closing brackets to the if statement, and if that's true, I want to log basically this section here. So OpenAI response choices, the first element in an array messages, and finally it's going to be content at the end. So this is just going to be a guard check to make sure it has exactly what we're looking for, and maybe not the best practice here, but I'm just going to create a alterable variable at the top with let OpenAI final response is equal to an empty string. I'm going to copy that, and then if this is true, I'm just going to set it to this here, and then for the user, I'm going to return the OpenAI final response in the data. One quick bug fix here is it's actually not messages, it is just message. I'm just going to remove the S at the end there. And so the data we're sending to the backend is OpenAI final response. So if we go to our front end now, and we go to API, let's make sure we can handle this response. So first, I'm just going to wrap this in a try and catch in case there are any errors along the way. So I'm going to hit console.log error, and then I'm going to handle my response. So const res from Axios. I'm going to say if res or my result and res.data and res.data.data. I can then return my res.data.data, which will include my final response in there. All right, so let's restart my server and let's try this again. So we'll go to the front end and then we'll input our interest and target audience, and then we'll send our response to the backend. And this should log here the actual response from OpenAI. So if I reorganize my window here, I'm going to hit Shopify merchants in target audience and then AI SEO tools as the interest. So let's click generate description. It actually should be idea. But if I go to my terminal here, I can actually see the response generated from OpenAI. Now I did hit that button twice. We might want to have some logic here so that can't happen, but we can see this looks pretty good. We can see AI keyword optimization, semicolon, then we can see the description of the idea, and it did so 5 times. So that's awesome to see there that things are working. So at the top, let's just go to the front end here, and I'm going to change description to generate ideas, as that is the wrong terminology. Next, let's actually go and make sure we're getting the idea on the front end. So we did update our API. Now let's go up to our handle submit here. Let's actually extract what we get from the backend, and that is OpenAI final response. So let's go and log this here just to make sure that's working okay. There's also one more quick thing I'm going to add to my server. So if we quickly navigate to the backend here and we go to the server.js file, I'm just going to write app.use bracket course. I'm just going to invoke the function there. And so this is going to make sure we can actually send data from our front end to our back end and then our back end to our front end, and it is going to get through and not be blocked there. So I'm just going to restart my server here. Let's go to our front end of our app. So for the target audience, let's put Shopify merchants again. And for the interest, let's go AI SEO tools. Let's go and generate the ideas. And now that I've waited for it to load, I can see we've logged the data we received back. So that's awesome to see. So let's go and format this, set a new state so we can actually display it on the page here instead of just writing your ideas. So let's go to the front end. We'll navigate to pages under idea generation page. I'm going to remove this log here and I'm going to create a new state. So I'm going to write const square brackets. I'm just going to call this generated ideas from API. and then set the state is just going to be set generated ideas from API, and that's going to be equal to use state. I'll just leave this as an empty array when it's not in use. So I'm going to remove this idea generation response from the top as we don't need that array anymore. And then underneath here from my response, I'm just going to go generated ideas from the API, and there's going to be set generated ideas from the API brackets, and then I'm going to paste this response here from OpenAI final response. So pasting that in here is going to set my state, and then I can then access it after it has been loaded. So I'm just going to copy generated ideas from API, and I'm going to scroll down here to the section under your ideas. So I'm just going to hover over this idea generation response, paste in my state, and so it's going to loop over now with all my ideas once they're generated. I'm just going to add a bit of logic as well, as I don't want this to display if there are no ideas loaded. So I'm going to hit a curly brackets. I'm just going to say generated ideas from API dot length. And so if it's greater than 0, it's going to be valid. I'm going to say and, so brackets here, and I'm just going to copy this entire section. And then I'm going to paste it here in my set of brackets. So I was going to say if the generated ideas from API.length, if that does exist, show my your ideas section. So if I go reload the page, it's not going to be displayed. Now let's try a final test here. Shopify merchants, AI SEO tools. And I'm going to click generate ideas and wait for this to load. And there actually is an error there because I just realized one more thing is that it is going to be a string. So we'll want to turn that into an array first on the back end. So this should just take a second here. So let's go to the back end. I'm going to remove this console.log. Then what I'll do is I'll go and just format this. And so what I did is I actually pulled this off Stack Overflow. It's essentially going to split our array here by the semicolon symbol. It is a regular expression, so it's kind of hard to read, but I will zoom in here and feel free to pause so you can copy this exactly. But what I will do here is say const open final response is going to be equal to itself. Actually, I don't need to define the const as it is already defined, but it's just going to be equal to itself, but split up and turned into an array. All right, now that's done. I've restarted the server, and let's hopefully try it again, and everything should load correctly this time. So AI SEO tools, and let's hit generate ideas and wait for this to load. And there we go, it's loaded here. We can now see your ideas. So AI product description generator, and I can see all my ideas listed from the title as well as the description below. Now there is some formatting fixes that we can do, but overall, I think that's a great start here. We have our backend and our front end. We can send responses from our front end to our backend server. It's going to send a request to OpenAI, generate an AI response. We're going to format it, send it back to our front end, and then display it for the user so they can get AI generated ideas. In this video, let's go and add in our navigation. So we're going to add in a sidebar navigation with a logo. This will enable us in the future to add more pages if need be. So we take a look at our existing app here. It's going to be a sidebar nav here. We'll maybe add some more space on the top if we maybe want to add something like a profile picture and some settings later on, we can do so. Let's go and add our left-hand navigation first. First, I'm going to go and create a logo though, so we can go and add that in on the side. My favorite tool for creating graphics is with Canva. So let's go here. Assuming you already have an account, you just want to hit create a design in the top right. It's also completely free too, so it does make it super easy. So I'm going to hit custom design. I'm just going to go 2000 by 2000 here, hit create design, and this brings me to my logo creation. What's great about Canva is it has a ton of templates. So if I just search logo here, it's going to give me a bunch of different logos. To note, anything with a crown does need a premium plan to go for. I think a logo like this will be fine for our app here. I'm just going to remove all the text, and I'll just keep this icon, and I'll expand it here just by dragging it, and then I'm going to remove the background. And since we have a dark background for our app, this should show up nicely. I'll hit share in the top right, then go to download. Now I do have Canva Premium, so I can download a transparent background, but you can easily use just any background remover tool. If you're on a Mac, Preview has a version of this as well. But to save time here, I'm going to download the transparent background, clicking on download, and I'm going to save this to the front end here under public. And I'm going to call this logo. If I head back into the application here, under public, I can see my logo has been added. And it does look nicer on a black background. I'm going to remove these React logos that come by default. So just selecting them here, then hitting delete, bring those to the trash. Okay, so let's go and add in our navigation. I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call this navigation. I'm going to create our sidebar nav. main.js. I'm also going to create another folder called layout, and I'm going to create a file just called main layout.js here. So what I'm going to do is, rather than linking to just the page itself, I'm going to link to this layout file. And within this layout file, I'm going to have both the navigation and the relevant component. So first, let's just link our page to our layout file here. Let's go and create this and kind of call this layout. And for the argument, I want to receive a component, and that's going to be the component I pass down. And then let's just export this at the bottom here. So in our return, we're going to have our component, and that's what we pass down here as our argument. I'm going to wrap this in another div, as what we'll want as well is our navigation here. I'll just comment that out for now, but I'll leave this as a placeholder. So let's head back to our app.js file. And rather than importing this page here, let's go and import our layout from the layout section. So here's our main layout. I'll just call this main layout as well, just for simplicity here. Let's go down. I'm going to copy and paste the main layout, and then I'm going to add a component in. And this time it's going to be our idea generator page. And now doing this does make it easier to add routing later on, as we can have our layout loaded many different times, and we can feed in a different component, so we don't have to recode that sidebar menu and navigation every single time. So let's quickly just navigate to our page here, hitting reload, just as a double check, and we can see everything is still loading okay. So let's tab back to our coding file here. So now let's go and set up our navigation. So again, I'm just going to call this sidebar nav, and then at the bottom, let's go and export this sidebar nav here. So let's go and return. There's going to be a basic div for now here, and I'm just going to write sidebar nav just so we know it's importing correctly. Let's remove our params here, head to our main layout, and let's go and import this now from the top. So let's go up one file, navigation, sidebar nav, and it's going to be our sidebar nav here. So let's enter that in. And if I go and reload it, I can see in the top left corner here, so it is being loaded okay. So first, let's go add our logo. So I'm going to give this an image, and I'll give it a source. I'm just going to call this logo.png. I can see that's way too large from what I need it to be. So let's go and edit that file by itself. So we go to front end, load public, load my logo here. I've opened it up in preview as I am using a Mac. If I go to tools in the top bar here, I click on adjust size. I can then make it smaller. I did do 2000 by 2000 in Canva. That's probably a little too large, but I do like creating a larger original file. This way I can use it in all my marketing or anything like that later on. But here I'd probably customize it and create a nice 150 by 150. You can see how that looks there. Then if I reload the page again, that's probably a little too big again. So let's open up the file, go to tools, adjust size, and let's try 100 and see how that looks. Maybe a little bit smaller than that. So let's try 75 by 75. Hit save. And I think that looks okay here on the left-hand side. So let's go and add some styling to our sidebar nav now. So let's first go give it a width. So I'm going to say width 60. I'm going to give it a margin left of 5, a margin top of 5, just so it's going to move off a little bit from the edge here. Moving to the page, I think that looks a little nicer. If I go to my layout as well, let's add some styling here. I'm going to say flex, then items start, and I'm going to give this a height of screen as well. I also need to go to my idea generator page, and let's make it width full here at the top of my component, so it's going to center that nicely. So loading the page here, everything looks pretty good, and if I start to drag that to a smaller window, we can see the sidebar nav is fixed. So let's go and add just this main page here underneath. So we will open up our navigation. We can then just call this create your ideas. And then wrapping this in a separate div, I can give it more space here. Let's give it a margin of 20 just for now, so it's separating that out a little bit. What I'll also do is add another encompassing div for all of this. I can just give it a black background so I can see what I'm doing, essentially, giving it a full height. So I think that looks a little better. Let's go ahead and extra page as well. Let's go and add in some routing so we can navigate between multiple pages. Let's close this, and we're going to install 2 files here. One of these is going to be React Router, and the other one's going to be React Router DOM. So let's go install those there, and then we can add routing to our app. I'm going to start my application again, npm start. So first, let's head back to my app.js file, and let's go import what's called browser router from React Router DOM, and this is going to let us actually use the routing here. So import browser router from React Router DOM. So I can then take this. I'm just going to wrap my entire file in it as well. So basically everything here can then access the routing. And let's go and set up our routes within here and create an overarching div of routes. And then there's going to be individual routes within it. So I'm also just going to import this here at the top, routes, route. And within one of these individual route divs, I can give it a path. So let's just give it our base slash here. And then for the element, let's throw in some curly brackets, and I'm just going to copy this and then paste it here. You can then create a separate route. I'm just going to call this settings. Let's go and just create a second page here. So under pages, I'm going to call this settings.js. So let's create a basic function called settings. It's not going to take any arguments. So let's just return a div called settings. And let's go and export this here. Default settings. Let's go back to the app.js file and let's import this at the top here. We call this a settings page and then settings. And I'm just going to rename this actually from settings to settings page just to be consistent. Let's change the idea generator page to settings. So if I load a different browser here, I can paste my localhost, and if I enter it here, I can see my main page for creating your micro Saas idea. Let's add settings here after the slash, and I can see my settings page has now been loaded. So we have some basic routing now, so we can navigate in between pages. Let's go and add an extra navigation item and make these clickable. So let's head to sidebar nav here. And at the top, I'm going to import from React, rather DOM. I want to import what's called link. This will let us set up linking between the pages. So I'm going to wrap the create your ideas here in a link div. And for two, I'm going to give it just the address of slash, as that's what we set it in our routes. I'm going to just copy this and add a second link for slash settings here. And I'm just going to call this settings. So if I reload our URL, I can click on settings, get to the settings page, and then create your ideas here loads a separate route. And now we have some basic navigation to our product. So let's go and add in a basic landing page. So on this landing page, I'm picturing just a few items. At the top, we're going to have our logo, and we're also going to have just a header here describing what the product is, a subtitle. We're going to have a call to action below that. It's probably going to say start for free now, or maybe start your 15-day free trial. We're going to center these elements here. Below that, I'm going to have just features, and we're just going to have 3 different icons with 3 different sub features. So we'll have features. We'll have one icon. I'm going to make this bigger here just so you can see what I'm doing. Our second icon and our third icon. And then below that, just a subtext here describing a little bit more about the feature. I'm just going to remove these. I'm just going to copy and paste this twice. Icon, subtext, icon, subtext. And then we're going to have a pricing section. And for now, we'll just leave it as one pricing plan. So we're going to give it a price, a benefit, another benefit, another benefit. And then we're going to have another CTA below that. Then below all that, we'll just have our footer. So just a few basic elements here. So let's go and build this step by step. So let's head back to our front end. Then under pages, I'm just going to keep this in the same file. I'm going to call this homepage.js. We'll give it a similar naming convention. Again, let's create our component. I'm going to call this homepage. We're going to export default homepage. And then I'm just going to return a div here. I'm just going to type out homepage for now, just so we can see that is being loaded okay. So let's head back to our app.js file. We're going to create another route at the top. We're going to give it the slash. We're going to change this one to generate ideas. And just quickly, I'm going to go to the sidebar nav here. Instead of the slash, I'm going to put in generate ideas. So heading back to our app.js file, our homepage is going to typically be loaded just on the base URL. So we're going to leave that there. And let's go and import our homepage at the top. Pages. I'm just going to rename this so it looks a little better. Homepage. Pages. Homepage. And let's go and use that as a component. Instead of wrapping it in the main layout though, we can just put it in there as it's not going to have a sidebar nav. It seems to be throwing an error here just by calling this homepage. So I'll just retitle this to main page. Main page. Then I'm going to rename the file to main page. I need to rename this component. It should actually be element there. And there we go. We have homepage element being loaded so we can see our route is connected properly. We can also go and check that the generate ideas is loading okay. So if I open up Safari here, then I paste just generate ideas, I can see this is loading, and then our settings route is also loading okay. So let's go and add those elements that we looked at. So first, let's add our logo, then we'll add our heading, subheading, and call to action. So first, let's add our logo. So I want to put this in its own separate div, image, source, logo.png, close that off. You can see it's now loaded. Again, let's give it margin left of 5, margin top of 5. So it's coming off the side a little bit. We can even center this. That actually might look a little better given that everything else on the page will be centered. So let's remove that. I'm just going to call MX Auto here on the top of this as each element is going to be centered in on the page. Let's give it a margin top and bottom for the entire section of just 4, just to give it some breathing room on the top here. So that's our first section. Let's go and add. So for now, I'm just going to put title and then subtitle and then our CTA below that. We can see our 3 elements. Let's go add our styling. So I'm going to say class name text.3XL, make this even larger, 5XL. For our subtitle, let's give this a text XL. And for our button, let's go and add even more styling to it. So I'm going to give it a border of 2. I'm going to give it a border of pink 700 for our color. I'm going to give it some padding horizontally of 4. PY is going to be 2. I'm going to say text is equal to XL. So let's see how that looks there. So we can see it now has a square border and some padding in between. Let's also set the BG color to pink-700, so the same there. I'm going to say rounded XL. So instead of CTA, let's remove this space and let's just add sign up for free today. You can even add an emoji here. And let's give this arrow pointing here. Let's give it a quick hover state so the BG color can then become pink 200, let's say. So if we hover over it, that's probably a little too bright. So let's change it. It's actually the same color as the page. So I believe that's gray 800. If we hover over it, it's probably a little too bright here. Let's try 900. And so it looks to be the same color. So when we hover over it, the border is going to appear and our text will still stand out nicely. Let's go and add some styling to our overall section here. Let's give it a margin top. Let's go with 32. And let's say flex column, and we'll give it a gap of 4. So some spacing in between my elements. Let's say items center. So everything is now centered here, although it does look to be off from the top. So if we go and inspect this here, we can try to figure out why. It looks to be this element that's hovering over our logo. So if we remove this extra div here, that should fix things. It doesn't seem to do it. So let's actually go and add MX Auto again. Or we can also just go flex column, items center, essentially giving it the same class, and that's going to center that nicely. For our title, let's replace this with generate micro Saas ideas with AI. And then for the subtitle, let's say something along the lines of get your next brilliant software idea in just seconds. Let's save that here. I think that looks a little better. I can even bold my header here just by going font bold. And I think that looks pretty good. Generate micro Saas ideas with AI. Get your next brilliant software idea. I could add a bracket here just to say it could be singular or plural. Remove that extra spacing. Idea in just seconds. Sign up for free today. However, to note, if I were to decrease the size of the window, the padding looks a little off here. So let's go and fix that. I'm just going to do this overall as well. For this section, saying MX4. So if we were to go and decrease this, it's going to give us a little bit more padding. Notice my title is a little off. Let's try text center. And so I can see on a mobile device, that's going to look pretty decent. And it looks the same in desktop. So that's a good start for our heading section. So let's load up our basic template here. So I'm just going to color this off all as green as we finish that part. Let's go to the features. We'll add 3 icons and then subtext for each feature. Okay, so let's move on to our feature section. Now to ground these icons, I'm just going to open up a new window in my terminal here. And I want to install a package called React Icons here. And make it super easy for us to have different icons. And so let's move on to our next section. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to create a new div, class name. I'm going to give it a margin between the elements of 32 this time for the top and the bottom. So let's add our heading. I'm just going to call this features. And then I'm going to create a div for all of my feature elements. So class name, I'm going to give it a grid, but then on large screens and above, grid column 3. I'm going to have my 3 individual elements. So I'm going to give it just a class, as I probably will be using that. It's going to be my icon, and then I'm going to have a sub description below. So let's just take that for each section here. I'm going to paste this twice, as we're going to have 3 elements. So let's go to my landing page. So we can see on large screens and above, I have features for my title, icon. And if I go and shrink that, they're going to collapse into just one column here. So let's head back here. So for my features, let's follow a similar format to above. So if I expand this here, I can see it's going to be text. Let's give it 3XL, so it's going to be smaller than our overall header. Let's go font bold again, and then text center. So reloading that looks better. Let's add a little bit of margin below that. Let's go margin bottom 10, see how that looks. Okay, I think that spacing is not too bad. Now for each of my text elements, let's add text center here, just so those look a little better. Now let's go and actually add my icons. So I'm going to open up Safari here and open up a new window. Let's go to React Icons, going to load the GitHub page here. We can see all of the icons that we can load. And so first, let's think about what we're going to write, and then we can find similar icons to load for that. So let's say the 3 benefits are going to be saving time, saving money, as you're not going to spend money on the wrong idea. And lastly, it's going to be saving energy, as you don't have to go and think of that idea yourself. You can let AI do it. So the first one we said save time. The second one we said save money. And lastly, we said save energy. Okay, so let's go find some icons that are similar to there. So let's search for money. Let's actually just keep this in Bootstrap icons. It should have enough here for us. So I'm going to search for money on the page. Okay, so nothing came up for money, but something did come up for dollar. You can see this one is called BS currency dollar. So I'm going to navigate back to my page here at the top. I'm just going to list that down, and we can go and add those in a second. Next, we had time. So let's search time, nothing. Let's try clock. So we have our clock icon here. So it's called BS clock. So I'm going to copy that again, pasting it here. And lastly, we had energy. So let's see if we can find a person running. Nothing there. And I searched for battery. Let's go to full battery, as you're going to have a full battery rather than before. So I'm going to copy this name here, pasting it in, commenting it out. And we can see the overall format for this is import icon name from react-icon/BS for Bootstrap. So I'm going to copy that overall. Let's just go and paste our individual icons here. So BS clock, paste that one in here. And then our last one is BS currency dollar. Let's paste that one in there too. The formatting I think is off for that one. So let's just remove that. And then let's go and paste in our icons. Here in our icon, let's just create a element, BS battery full. This one actually goes last here under save energy, closing tag for it. So let's do the same for save money. We can see it's called BS currency dollar, BS currency dollar. And lastly, we have save time here, and this one's called BS clock. So let's save that, go back to our landing page, and we can see we have our icons now. Now those will do pretty small, so let's go and increase the size here. So under the icon, you can take a variable called size. Let's say 20, go back to our page. This still looks pretty small here, so let's incrementally increase the size and see if this makes a difference. Let's try 30, hit save. A little bigger now, we can probably try even bigger. Let's just try 50. And okay, I think 50 looks okay. So let's just copy that variable here in for each of them. And then let's give a larger font here for our subtext. So save time. Let's go text to XL. Might be a little too large there. Let's just try XL, see how that looks. I think that might look okay. And for each of these, I would like it centered as the icon and then the subtext. So let's add flex column, items dash center. So I think that looks better there. Let's add a gap of 4. Overall, I think that looks okay there. What I might do as well is add a border for each of these so we can make this look a little more separated. So let's go and do that. First, I'm just going to copy this styling here, pasting it in this div and this div. So let's go and add that border, see how it looks. Let's try border to adding the border in the first place, and let's give it a BG, or actually a border color of white. So I think that looks okay there. Let's change this to rounded XL, just like our button. Give it a PX of 4 and a PY of 2. Let's actually give it a lighter gray border. So let's go gray, 400, just so it's not as prominent as our icon. Again, let's copy this border into each of these stylings. Theoretically, we probably would create a component here so we don't have to copy our stylings. Just leave it like this for now. Let's add a gap to each of these of 4, and they are separated now. And for features, what I'm going to do is just make this text 4XL so that stands out a little better. Save time, save money, save energy. Theoretically, too, you could probably add a sub-description just to flesh out these features a little bit more. Without spending too much time on that, though, let's green this off as that is now done. And lastly, we want to add our pricing section. Then we want a card underneath with the plan name, I think, at the top, the price, and then 3 benefits and another call to action. And again, we'll add a border around that to make it look a little nicer. So let's close this section here, paste another overall div, and let's just add pricing in there to see what it looks like. So below this, so again, let's copy the same format. So we'll give it a title of pricing just to announce our section, class name, text, or XL, and we'll give it a font of bold. Pricing, and then text center to center that element. And let's go add our card beneath that. So let's create another div. We give it a class name, and give it a border of 2, border just to declare a border, and then we'll give this a border of gray, maybe 200 this time, and rounded -XL. And let's add some content within it. Let's actually first give it a padding, so we don't have to do that later. So for our plan name, let's just call this standard plan. Then we'll have a price below that. And then this plan is probably going to include maybe 3 different benefits. So benefit 1, and then benefit 2, benefit 3. We can see all elements are in there. let's add a margin to the top of this. Let's say 10. For standard plan, let's give this more of a title here. So text XL, go a little bigger than that. So 2XL. And for each of our elements here, let's give it a flex column again. And then we'll give it a gap of, let's try 2. Then let's also center it by items dash center. So we have standard plan, price, benefit 1, benefit 2, benefit 3. Let's give all of our text just an XL size here. And for a price, let's just say $9 a month. We could say 500 ideas a month for this plan. Let's just say priority support here. And then something random just includes all new feature updates. So those are our 3 benefits. What I could do is add a icon with this as well. So let's go back to React icons. So under bootstraps, we'd have to import more. Let's search for check. Let's go with this bookmark check here. So BS bookmark check. Go back to our file to the top under our import for the icons. Let's import that there. Let's go and add this icon in. So icon name, we're going to close that div, maybe give it a size of 10. Let's see how that looks. Looks to be on a separate column. So what we will probably have to do is just add flex to the surrounding element. So it's going to keep it in the same row. Let's change the size a little bit. It does look a little small. So let's try 15. And then let's just wrap our icon in another element here, another div. We can add a little bit of margin on top just so it's more in line. So we can see it showing up here. It does look a little small. So if I zoom out there, it's a little small. So let's make this 20. Now the margin is a little off, so let's try removing that and actually putting it back in there, just adding 1. Let's add a margin right of 2. That's a little small. That's because it's not formatted properly. And that looks better. And I just realized that should be actually for not the pricing, but these other 2 sections. Let's actually just go and create a reusable component here. We'll call this a plan feature. And it's going to take text within it, and it's just going to return a component with essentially this section here. So I'm going to paste that in instead of $9 a month. I'm going to include that part of the text. So plan feature, let's scroll back down here, paste in our component, plan feature, close it off, give it a text of 1 is going to be $500 a month. For our second one, it's going to be our priority support. And for our last one here, it's going to be includes all feature updates. So let's go and paste that text here, removing all of this, and then removing this icon here, and then removing this flex here. Okay, so we loaded it here. We now have our 3 components, and we have our check marks, and then a list of the features. We could maybe give this an overall section of div, features. So finally, let's go and add a footer section on the bottom. So again, a new div here. I'm going to add a div, and I'm just going to say copyright, build a micro Saas Academy. So here we would probably link to our privacy policy, but I'm just going to leave it for now. And one thing to note, I need to go to app.js and actually just remove this height screen here, just so we can scroll down. Okay, so I can see copyright, build a micro Saas Academy at the bottom. And let's just go and center this here with text.center. I can also give this a different color. So text, let's go BG. Make sure I need to add a class name first. Text gray 600. So it's not as prominent. So overall, that's our basic landing page here. I think if anything would be improved, it's probably this pricing section. It usually looks a little better when you have 3 different plans rather than just 1. Our featured section use a little more content too. But overall, I think that's a decent start here. Realistically, at the beginning, we just want to make sure that we can get people signed up for this. We can do so simply with just our headline, subheading, and a call to action. Now, I did say I was going to add a call to action here in the pricing. So let's go and add that quickly. I'm just going to copy my existing button, paste it in here below my plan feature. Now I can see sign up for free today. So a decent start here, but let's move on. In this video, I wanted to create more of a technical implementation and show you how I would upload my micro Saas, where I would host it for the front end and the back end, and just the overall process using an example walkthrough. So in terms of the app I'll be uploading in this video, will be the front end and the back end for the idea and persona generator that should be available in the course. It should be under the resource section, but I'll be uploading the back end to Heroku and the front end to Netlify. So for the front end, we'll be using Netlify here. It has a completely free plan, which is very advantageous when starting out, as if we go to the pricing It's $0 to get started, and you get 100 gigabytes of bandwidth and 300 build minutes, I believe, on a monthly basis. And overall, it works really smoothly with React. It makes it super easy to upload, and it has an automatic deploy from GitHub. To note as well, for this Saas application, it uses Node.js on the back end, and it uses React on the front end. In terms of the back end, it will be hosted on Heroku. I've used Heroku for just about every Saas app I've launched. It makes it so I don't have to manage any of these servers or anything like that. It's really up to you on where you want to host this. You could be using Docker, or you have your AWS instance. It's up to you and what you're comfortable with and what you know. Heroku is probably on the more expensive end when you start to scale, but it does make it super easy, as you don't have to worry about any of the hosting, deployments, servers, or anything like that. In terms of pricing for Heroku, it's going to be depending on the number of hours per month, but there is an eco and basic plan meant for low cost. They call them dynos, to test your ideas or run apps to see intermittent usage. So that's $5 a month. On the lowest end, it's $7 a month. And I've never gone past production here, as you can host multiple different, what they call dynos, to handle different tasks. And so on the basic plan for small projects and concepts, it's max $7 a month. We also get a free SSL certificate and automated certificate management. So if you want to follow along with me, create an account for both of these platforms, and we'll start with Netlify first. So once you log into Netlify, you should have a dashboard here. Now I already have sites and builds uploaded, so your dashboard might look a little different. But to deploy a new site here, we'll go to Sites on the left-hand side menu. Then I'll go and click on Add New Site. You can import from an existing project, start from a template, or deploy manually. What I usually do is just import an existing project, and then I'll select Deploy with GitHub. You also get the options to deploy with GitLab, Bitbucket, or Azure DevOps. So I use GitHub here as I have it hooked up to my Netlify account already. That's what I use to manage my versions. So if you click on Deploy with GitHub, it's going to load your GitHub profile, and then you're going to see all your different repositories here. So I've blurred mine out, but I'm going to select the idea and persona generator. So you then get to select the team, the branch. I just leave this as the main branch here, the base directory, the build command. To note, instead of the default one here, if there are errors in your React application, they could just be warnings. Using this instead, so you have CI equals false before your npm run build, that lets it build correctly without failing. You can also add in your environmental variables. And then once you're there, you just hit deploy, and that's going to deploy your site live. Now I already have a version of this site deployed, so I'm going to skip the duplication here, and then I'll show you what it looks like after it's been deployed. So after it's been deployed, you can see your setup site. So you can add a custom domain and secure it with HTTPS. It also gives you a Netlify URL, which you can use if you don't want to buy a domain yet. What I usually do for my front end as well is for the environmental variable, I'll set that up so I can link to either my local host, or when it's live, I'll set the environment variable to the Heroku server URL that's created when our Heroku instance is set up. But I'll leave it to you depending on what you want to do there. But just like that, your site should be live, at least the front end, and it's hosted on this custom URL until you add your own version. So for Heroku, once you've created your account, you will need to add your billing information, as there is no completely free plan. But what you want to do is just go to the dashboard. You can see I already have the idea and persona generator created. Let's go through the process of creating a new dyno in a new instance. So click on New here, and I'll hit Create New App. So you can give it a app name. To note, the customer is not going to see this. So I'm just going to call this Idea Generator Second. I won't be using this as it's going to be a duplicate instance. Next, you can choose the region to either United States or Europe. It's going to depend where most of your customers are. You're probably not going to know it at the beginning. Usually I just select United States. Then you're going to hit Create App. And this is going to create a new dyno for you. So first you can select your deployment. Usually I do an auto deployment connected to my GitHub account. So you can just search for the repo name here. So if I search idea and hit search, I can see the idea and persona generator backend that I have uploaded to my GitHub account. So you just hit connect there, and that's going to connect that automatically. And I can go down and click on enable automatic deploys. So once you click on that, I would recommend setting up your environmental variables. Under settings here, you can go down to the config variables, set those up. You can also add build packs here. So this is necessary depending on what you're running. So for me, I'm running Node.js. So I would select Node.js build pack, and I would add that in. This makes sure that Heroku can then go and run Node.js on the back end for this dyno. In terms of other things to set up, you will need to go to resources resources, and once you've uploaded your code, you get the ability to select which dyno type you want. So to start, it's probably going to be that starter package at $7 a month. I'll navigate to the live version here so we can see what that looks like. We can see I just have the web node server.js, and it's 0.1 cents per hour. And it's going to be the basic dyno type here at $7 a month. However, it's pretty great because you can see quite a few things, such as the metrics in your dashboard. You can get detailed metrics. If you want to see the exact logs, you can hover over more in the top right, then click on view logs. But overall, in a nutshell, that's how I would upload a micro Saas application. I typically use Netlify on the front end and Heroku on the back end. Now, it's going to be up to you depending on what you use, but I thought it'd be helpful to include this just as an overview of a tutorial. And for the customers, well, they're never going to see what your site is hosted on. They're not going to really care about the tech stack for your micro Saas. They're only going to care about if it solves their problem and if it's a useful product. So I wouldn't worry too much on this. I would do what's comfortable for you, or if you want to go something completely free, if you can find that as well, feel free to do that.